What if the greatest magic wasn't in spells, but in being seen, heard, and loved? In this final chapter of An Ant's Love, we witness the full circle of Harry's journey, not as a boy who lived, but as a boy finally allowed to live. Welcome to Grimoire Audiobooks, where stories of courage, healing, and possibility are brought to life. Today, we complete our journey through Emma Lipardi's transformative work, a quiet, powerful reimagining of the wizarding world through the lens of love, choice, and second chances. Disclaimer: this audiobook is a fan-created adaptation of a non-canon Harry Potter story. All original characters and universe settings belong to J.K. Rowling. We celebrate this fan work for its emotional depth and creative reinterpretation. In this chapter, consequences are settled, futures are considered, and peace, long elusive, begins to feel possible. It's not flashy magic or grand destiny that defines Harry's path now, but compassion, boundaries, and the steady presence of someone who never stopped fighting for him. If you've traveled this far with us, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and join the Wizard Army or become a Grimoire Guardian to support the continuation of thoughtful, heartfelt fanfiction adaptations. Let's begin the final part of An Ant's Love by Emma Lipardi. 71. Talking. Harry crawled out from under the blankets in Gryffindor Tower, cursing clandestine meetings with teachers, mad dark lords, and valet vampires the whole while. He had managed a good 45 minutes of sleep for his first night back at Hogwarts, and thought himself lucky for that much. None of the other boys were moving yet. He shrugged off the idea of waking them and moved towards the showers. He was attacked by an overenthusiastic vampire the minute he stepped into the room. Cassius had him stripped and into a stall in less time than it took Harry to protest that he needed no help. The shock of cold water caused him to give a manly scream before the water changed to warm. "This is payback for the rice last night, isn't it?" Harry demanded as he lowered his head underneath the spray of the water, reaching out to lean his hands against the walls of the stall. Revenge? Now, really, would I enact revenge on my charge? Especially a charge that knows vampires count things. Cassius gave a chuckle that made Harry wonder if his own neck was safe from the vampire. "You'd better hurry, young master. It'll go cold again in exactly 3 minutes." Cassius sounded very proud of himself. Harry grumbled some rude words he was sure the vampire heard before rushing through his shower. He did stay in long enough to allow the cold water to shock him awake again. He had the feeling he might need it again later. He was exhausted. Harry stepped out of the shower and took the towel Cassius offered, pausing only to glare at the vampire. Harry brushed off the man's help and returned to his room to find one of his new uniforms waiting for him. Harry decided not to fight Cassius's plans and submitted to the new uniform without a complaint. "Pick your battles, Harry. Pick your battles." He packed his school bag with all of his books and supplies for the day, wondering why schedules weren't given out ahead of time like they were at St. Jude's. St. Jude's had always posted schedules the day before, so that the students knew of any changes as classes, activities, and therapies shifted around. It was helpful, especially since Harry had had 2 sets of classes to try and finish while at St. Jude's. He set a feather-light charm on his satchel and stood, waiting for Cassius to finish. The vampire swept around him in a flurry, doing things to his hair that actually allowed it to stay manageable. Harry finally stepped back and thanked him, knowing that Cassius would spend a lot of time on it if Harry didn't stop him now. Cassius only smoothed down Harry's shoulders and sighed. "You still look tired, young master," he told Harry seriously. "An early bedtime tonight. I think. Harry nodded in agreement and sighed. He felt tired, even though he just woke up. Go to breakfast and make sure you eat something wholesome. We have a few things to go over, but that will wait until this evening after your other classes. I'm sure you don't want me following you around to classes today, but please be sure to make some time to write to your father. He enjoys hearing from you. Yes, Cassius, thank you. Harry finally said, shouldering his satchel. I'll see you later. Cassius was gone before the sentence was finished. Harry wondered where the vampire had managed to find a place of his own in Hogwarts, but decided that it was none of his business. The vampire had probably found the nicest room in the whole place and decided to make it his own. If he knew Hogwarts, she had probably welcomed Harry's bodyguard with open arms and personal house elves carding in bottles of blood got by house elf secrets. He firmly pushed those thoughts away and went down to the Great Hall for breakfast. The Great Hall was filled with an expectant energy when he entered it. There were groups of first years everywhere clustered together, whispering between them. There were other groups scattered about, some bleary-eyed and still yawning, and others, like Hermione, full of excitement for their first day. She waved at him and scooted aside to offer him space to sit. Good morning, Harry. How do you sleep? Harry considered glaring at her before shrugging in a noncommittal way as he dropped into the seat next to her. He said, dropping his bag behind him. Had a difficult time falling asleep after the meeting. He said, knowing she was too observant for her own good. Some kind house elf in the kitchen must have heard his comment as a mug of coffee appeared in front of him. Oh, the source of my power. He cackled, taking up the mug. Thank you, the providers of caffeine and sanity. Hermione slowly turned to him, with her eyes wide in shock, with an air of astonishment about her. Harry, did you not sleep at all last night? About 45 minutes, give or take. Harry admitted, lifting the mug to his lips. He wondered if Creature had visited, or if Cassius had stopped in the kitchens to tell the elves how he took his coffee. It was perfect, sweet, and dark. My precious coffee. Right, Smeagol. That was disturbing. Hermione turned back to her books and breakfast, giving Harry time to drink his coffee and ponder the breakfast selections in front of him. He had no appetite again, but he knew eating was sort of required, especially since his magic was telling him that Cassius was closer than he thought. Did that vampire never sleep? Hermione slipped some fruit on his plate when he pretended to be considering some pastry, and scrambled eggs somehow crawled onto his plate all by itself. This makes me miss Aunt Petunia's porridge. At least she's upfront about it. He had 3 more cups of coffee before breakfast was over, and suddenly Professor McGonagall was handing out their schedules and wishing each of them good day. Harry looked down at his schedule and groaned, just barely refraining from bashing his head into the table. Potions was first thing that morning with the Slytherins. Does anyone else know, I wonder? How ridiculous, how pointless this is. His frustration climbed inside of him, and he seriously considered skiving off potions to go take a nap and then find some way to create a telly and VCR so he could watch Star Wars. He memorized his schedule and then folded it up to tuck away in his bag. Ready for class? Harry asked, rising to his feet. Yes, I am. Hermione's voice was even and serious. Let's go. The walk down to the dungeons was silent. They reached the potions classroom to find the door still locked. Harry slid down the wall to sit on the floor to wait for the potions master. Hermione dropped down in front of him, her elbows on her knees, and her head in her hands. She studied him, watching his face for some clues. She simply waited. Don't tell her. She's suspicious about you. You're tired. When you're tired, you're weak, and she'll have it out of you in seconds if you open your mouth. Don't do it. Do not speak at all. We can sit here all day, Harry. Eventually, you'll tell me what's bothering you. Hermione said evenly before becoming silent again. One eyebrow arched, as though telling him to get on with it. I dash. Young Master Harry. Cassius's scandalized voice snapped into the hallway, startling Harry into shooting to his feet. Sitting on the ground, Cassius did a fairly accurate impression of swooning. Young men of your status do not sit on the ground with young ladies. Hermione snorted as Harry reached down to offer her a hand to her feet, but she nodded and took it to allow him to pull her up. He has the worst timing. She muttered to Harry. I heard that, Cassius told her. And I have perfect timing, for your teacher will be here shortly. Please, Master Harry, I do have to sleep and cannot be at your side every second. So please have a care for your status in this world, and your father's status in the world. I don't care about my status. Harry told him, but you should and will care about your father's status. Your behavior reflects on him. Keep it in mind. Cassius smoothed Harry's robes, fussing a bit with how they were hanging before disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Did you have to bring a vampire to school? Hermione asked him. I had no choice in the matter. Harry objected. He just sort of showed up on the train and hasn't left since. Harry folded his arms and growled. This is not my fault. It never is it? Hermione asked, voice full of sympathy. No, it's not. Harry said. Well, either way, it's almost over, yeah? Harry told her. Just this year to get through, and things should settle down. I hope so. Anyway. He shrugged again. Gah. Hermione and Harry whirled towards the staircase in shock. Back, you fanged lunatic. That was Professor Snape. Hermione said softly. Yes, it was. Harry agreed. Sounded like he was talking to Cassius. Hermione leaned out to see if she could see further down the hallway. Yep. Harry agreed. No, you can't have just a taste. Snape's voice bellowed. Potier. Think I should go rescue him? Harry asked Hermione. Harry, do you think Cassius fancies Professor Snape? Hermione asked in a horrified whisper. I just can't imagine anyone fancying my potions teacher. Hermione, I know he's human and all, but dash. Potier. Now, Harry sighed, tilting his head back. Cassius, leave him alone now, that's an order. Harry muttered, knowing the vampire could hear him without a problem. Snape came storming down the hallways towards them, buttoning his collar. Keep that thing away from me, Potter, or so help me, all of your progeny will feel my wrath. Harry wondered if Snape knew that no Potter progeny was likely to happen. I'll do my best, sir. He told Snape. Their teacher motioned them into the classroom, grumbling to himself about something Harry couldn't quite make out. Knowing him, it was probably a potion that would kill vampires. The rest of their classmates came into the room at intervals, still chattering. Harry and Hermione sat side by side, their books, parchment, and quills already out, their cauldrons ready for brewing. Snape slashed his wand at the blackboard, and instructions for a potion scrawled themselves onto the board behind him. Harry's last days at Hogwarts had begun. Sunlight filtered in through the curtains, breaking him out of his deep sleep. Things were going perfectly, he thought. The boy was away at school. That was good. Hogwarts was good. Can't protect him. Not there. Not with Dumbledore. He was fine. Things were fine. A quick stop in the bathroom saw him ready to face another day. You're not okay. The boy did something. The boy wouldn't do anything. The boy liked him. Cared about him. No one cares about you. Not true. The boy cared. Wanted to make their plans become reality. The boy cared. He cared. No, he doesn't. Of course he does. Like Dumbledore cared? He's not Dumbledore. He cares. He does. He looked down as his old familiar slithered down the hallway. He couldn't understand what she wanted anymore. She's quit talking to me. She only hisses at me as though she's angry. You don't understand her anymore. She's speaking clearly. You chose not to understand. Shut up. He snapped at the voice, wanting the peace quiet would bring. I don't want to hear what you say. What I say. You're saying it. Be quiet, I said. I don't want to hear what you say. He demanded obedience. That's the way to win, wasn't it? Demand obedience. Expect it. Punish those who don't do as he says. The boy is not obedient. He's pulling the wool over your eyes. You fool, a little boy is making a daft idiot of you. Not my boy. He would never, he countered, practically spitting the words against the offense voice. Not my boy. That's right, he's not your boy. He never belonged to you. You like to think that. He's a consummate actor, I'll give him that. Then again, you were easy to fool. Pathetic. No, I know. He pressed his hands to his ears. No more, no more. He mumbled. Fool yourself if you like. I'll get to say, I told you so, very soon. My lord, a hesitant voice said at his elbow. Voldemort looked up, only realizing just now that he had fallen to his knees at some point during the argument he had had with the voice that never seemed to go away these days. Breakfast is prepared for you, and there is a letter from the boy. He wrote to me? Voldemort stood up, eager to see what his boy had to say about school so far this week. It appears so, my lord. I left it next to your plate. Voldemort strode into the dining room and spotted a parchment envelope sitting next to his plate with no address on it. He snatched it up, ignoring the breakfast on the table. He dropped into his seat as he broke the seal. Dear sir, I hope my letter finds you in good health and that the days are not very dull without me there. I'm settling in well at school and find my classes to be satisfying. You were right. The food is as good as you led me to believe, and my bed is very comfortable. School this year was the right decision. There's no place like home. You know, my potions professor seems to be having some difficulty fending off a vampire's amorous attentions. It's quite hilarious to watch. I know the vampire is not really interested. He's just trying to keep things lively. I suspect it's 50% boredom and a slight hint of attraction. Either way, the thought of anyone dating one of my teachers is slightly disturbing. After my first night back, things have been very calm. There have been some sightings of what people call the Dark Lord student here and there. Some wild rumors are making their way around the school, and even the staff here. It's fun to hear them speculate. The person they are describing is so powerful Merlin himself would be afraid of him. England's losing sleep over the young Dark Lord, and not in a respectful way. All of the girls here seem to think he's quite the lover, something about haystacks. Barking mad, the lot of them. Regardless, it makes things interesting. Nothing else has happened while I've been here. so I've not a lot to tell. I'll make sure my next letter is full of news or more gossip. Either way, it's amusing. Sincerely, your student Tom. Voldemort chuckled at the boy's letter, imaging what kind of havoc he was creating and how much fun he was having. My boy, oh my boy. In the hallway, 3 Death Eaters were watching the Dark Lord laughing at what was clearly a blank piece of parchment. No words could be seen at all. They shared loaded looks as the man folded up the parchment and tucked it away in the pocket of his robes. He had been talking to himself all morning, actually arguing with himself over the boy, his familiar, and who knew what else. The disturbing behavior, these spells of insanity, were becoming alarming to everyone. It was time to take action. Contact the young Dark Lord. How exactly am I supposed to do that? The one demanded of the others. Find Robinson. He should know. The man nodded and moved away from the others, leaving them to watch the Dark Lord. He was glad he had done, so when he heard Voldemort scream, "This is not acceptable," Voldemort threw the dishes from the table and whirled on the remaining Death Eaters. Crucio. Minerva McGonagall dropped into her favorite armchair and heaved a sigh, feeling her years more now than she had for some time. It wasn't just the teaching, the papers, and the start of a new school year that was on her mind. It was on the feeling of the school in general, as though they had lost something when Dumbledore retired, as though some of the young people's energy and joy had gone out of the whole group. True, they were on the edge of the impending war, but still the complete loss of optimism was weighing down her students like nothing else she had seen, especially the boy. She always thought of him as the boy these days, regardless of the fact that he was starting to look like an old man, weary and wary of the world around him. Once he heard the young Dark Lord rumors, he seemed a little hunted, a little unsure of the people around him. As always, any time a new rumor appeared, there was some backlash against Harry Potter. The press was not helping matters, and there were some students speaking out against the Gryffindor, as though it was his fault that things had come to this, as though Harry Potter could be the young Dark Lord. She laughed to herself a bit as she stood and moved out of her office. She made it a point to be seen walking the halls of Hogwarts nowadays. She wanted the students to know that she was sharing the same space as they were, that they were able to see her whenever they wanted. She was their headmistress, after all. The students should be able to speak with her on a daily basis without guessing candies or making the trek to the head's office. She turned a corner and heard laughing coming from the end of the hallway. It was carefree and slightly hysterical at the same time. She was curious to see what her students were up to, so she crept forward to the end of the hallway as silently as she could manage and peered around the corner. The first person she saw had been the subject of her thoughts earlier. Harry Potter was leaning against the wall, holding his sides as he threw back his head and laughed again. And then, get this, he giggled, just sank into his chair and giggled. I tell you, Harry, I almost died trying not to laugh at him. I mean, he's supposed to be this big, fearsome person, so fearsome we can't say his name. And he giggled. The boy had a slight accent she couldn't place, but it seemed that he and Harry knew each other well. Tom, seriously. Harry leaned forward, resting against the wall, his back heaving as he tried to catch his breath. I can't dash, he laughed again, shaking his head. Minerva caught sight of the other boy and gasped silently to herself. It was the other boy, the Dark Lord student. So there was some substance to the rumors that he was at Hogwarts. Then, strange that she did not recognize him as a current student. She checked his robes for a crest, but it seemed that the robes were plain black. The pair of them seemed without a care in the world as they talked and laughed with each other. Minerva watched them for a few more minutes. They appeared to know each other very well if their interaction was any evidence. "Did you hear something?" the boy's voice said suddenly. "I don't think so," Harry answered lightly. "I'm still hearing the Dark Lord giggle. It's high-pitched, right? Kind of high." "Huh, now that you mention it, it is." The two boys started laughing again. Minerva rounded the corner and stood watching them. Both boys looked up at the same time, and their smiles faded a bit. Harry whispered something to the other boy, and then stepped forward, blocking Minerva from advancing. She watched as the other boy turned with a swirl of his robes and started down the hallway. "Out of the way, Mr. Potter. I simply need to speak to your friend there." "What friend, Professor?" Harry asked, looking confused. "Your friend." She trailed off when she saw that the other youngster had disappeared. "Well, where did he go?" she asked him. "Where did who go?" Harry asked before shrugging. "If you'll excuse me, Professor, I have some homework to finish." The boy nodded to her as he passed her. "La, they seek him here. They seek him there. The students seek him everywhere." He turned the corner and was gone. Minerva stood in the hallway for a few minutes in indecision, trying to find her options without upsetting what she knew she had to do. There was always the parchment. She knew Tom would respond to messages she wrote out. She would far prefer a face-to-face meeting with him. He was just a boy, but she knew little of his motivations. He didn't seem to want to hurt anyone, but he still claimed his status as the Dark Lord's student without a qualm. He seemed very young, especially when he was laughing with Harry Potter, but his eyes had been sad and tired the first night she met him. He was a conundrum, and she wasn't certain if pursuing him was the best idea at this point. She wrapped her arms around herself and sighed, feeling every bit of her years. Paul dropped his bag inside the door of his house and toed off his shoes, giving a tired sigh of relief. After 26 hours at St. Jude's, it was good to be home again. His current patient had turned violent, attacking other students and staff with abandon. It took 3 of the nurses to subdue him, and even Paul was not safe from the boy. His face showed the evidence of a well-placed punch he had not been expecting. Sadly, St. Jude's had a strict policy against physical attacks, and the boy had to be transferred to an adolescent treatment unit until his behavior stabilized. Paul would make a once-a-week journey to continue seeing him, in hopes that he would be transferred back to St. Jude's once he made some progress in controlling his anger and violent attacks. "You can't help everyone, Paul." He reminded himself again, feeling a little lost. He wanted so much to help everyone he could. He just had to face the idea that not everyone needed his type of help. Some needed other things and other people. He wandered into his tiny kitchen and opened the fridge, hunting for something that would quiet the growling in his stomach. He didn't want a full meal, just something little that would keep the hunger calm, so that he could fall into bed for 8 to 10 hours before reporting back to St. Jude's the next day. He selected a container of yogurt and closed the fridge, pausing to study the pictures he had hung there. These children were his success stories, the children who went back to their lives with the skills and coping mechanisms to allow them to live their lives without falling back into the problems that had brought them to Paul in the first place. The latest picture still caused a moment of concern every time he looked at it. Harry stayed very much in Paul's thoughts, regardless of the fact that he was considered a success case by St. Jude's. He had recovered from his depression and anxiety, had a wonderful support network, and was a great person that Paul enjoyed knowing. There were things that worried Paul about Harry: his ability to hide his thoughts and feelings even when he had the opportunity to share them, his overwhelming sense of responsibility for others' actions, and his certainty that he would not survive the wizarding world all made Paul question exactly how much help he had been to the boy. Paul sighed. It was out of his hands now. Harry had returned to his life, and no further follow-up. Appointments had been scheduled for him. He had called Petunia about Harry, citing some concerns, but she firmly believed that Harry was recovered enough to return to school and his life. He asked for her to schedule a follow-up appointment for Harry during the winter holidays. She wanted to ask Harry what he thought first. Paul walked into his living room and stopped in shock as a light flicked on. There, sitting in his living room, was a vampire. Paul stared for just a minute, a little surprised that out of everything his brain, his scientifically trained brain, could use to describe the man before him, supplied the word vampire. The man smiled at him, gesturing for Paul to enter the living room. Paul was aware of several things at once. Someone had managed to enter his house without the alarm going off. This person had made himself very much at home in Paul's living room. There was a glass of water on the side table and a novel resting on his knee in his lap. Most worrisome at all, he looked pleased to see Paul. "Good evening, Doctor. I've been looking forward to meeting with you. I have heard a great deal about you." The smooth voice drifted to Paul's ears. Paul blinked and shook his head. "I'm sorry. I wasn't aware we had an appointment." "Oh, weren't you? An oversight, I'm sure. Please call me Vlad." 72. Meetings and Messages. Vlad stepped out on his balcony, a note from Cassius clenched in his fist. The lights from the city twinkled in the distance, the noise of London strangely muted by the miles between his home and the city. Cassius had worries about his charge at Hogwarts, and Vlad could not deny that he wasn't concerned for the boy as well. There was something forced about Harry's cheerful letters, and it was obvious Harry was keeping something from him. Visiting the boy's doctor was practically wasted time. The doctor probably thought he was closed off and gave nothing away. Had Vlad been mortal, he would have been right. The doctor was very good at hiding his emotions, but Vlad could sense those subtle changes that humans were unable to see that told Vlad his questioning had been along the right lines. The doctor was concerned, and for good reason. Harry was planning to die. He wasn't going to commit suicide. Oh no. He was just going to confront Voldemort and allow himself to be struck down with the monster himself. He could not see a life for himself beyond fulfilling his destiny. That was unacceptable in Vlad's mind, and thankfully in Paul Lauder's mind as well. Without hearing the man say it, Vlad was reassured that Paul would fight Harry himself if he had to just to save his life. And Paul Lauder was in for such a long battle. He would need support. Harry's doctor would not find himself friendless, even though he did not enjoy visiting with Vlad. Most mortals didn't, if Vlad was honest with himself. Harry and his family were some of the few people he had found that were totally accepting of him as he was. Even Harry's pet werewolf advisor accepted him, and the history between werewolves and vampires was not pristine by any stretch of the imagination. Vlad had faced Harry's doctor, feeling the man's demands to leave his physical blows, considering he had absolutely no permission to be in his home, and it was excruciating to maintain his ground. That's one of the few things humans forgot about vampires. They could not enter a dwelling without permission unless they wanted some serious repercussions. Vlad had finally had enough of the irritating human and the pain he was experiencing, and stepped forward, holding him lightly against a wall. He could smell the anger, but surprisingly, no fear when he leaned in to speak in the doctor's ear. "You have every right to be angry, doctor. I came into your house uninvited. And believe me, I plan to stay no longer than I need to finish my business here and take myself off just as quickly as I appeared, as it is extremely uncomfortable for me to remain in this house without permission. Remember this, my friend. Regardless of law or conventionality, I must save this boy. This boy has lost so much and deserves so much more. I will not rest until he is safe, even if he needs saving from himself. I will see him safe and happy. I will do whatever it takes, doctor. When the time comes, you will be there, whether you wish to come at my request or for Harry alone. You will be there. If you think I cannot force this issue, trust me, I can. I am able to bring down chaos, should I wish. Please don't make me." The doctor had surprised him. He freed himself from Vlad's hold and then advanced on him. "Just try to stop me." He snarled. "Now remove yourself from my house. You are not welcome here." Vlad had to wonder if Harry had tutored him on how to act around vampires. Vlad had merely bowed, giving the doctor an ironic smile. "I'll show myself out, doctor." He disappeared from the man's eyes, pausing outside to peer in the window to see how the man reacted to the shocks he had this evening. There was some grumbling about the evening taking a turn for the weird before going upstairs. Vlad couldn't help but laugh at the man's comment. There was some spirit in this man, this friend of his son. Vlad would need that spirit if the fight he would face with Harry was going to be as bad as Neith had warned him. There were arrangements he needed to make, and they would be needed shortly. Harry settled down on the grass a fair distance away from the castle, a warming charm on his cloak to combat the chill drifting across the grounds of Hogwarts. Dinner had finished some time ago, and curfew was fast approaching. Harry had left everyone in the hall, suddenly unable to stand being around other people, especially when he listened to their conversations. He wondered if his previous time at Hogwarts was nothing but a waste of his time and talents, if he had to be honest with himself. Here he was, only 17, and already regretful of the life he had led in the wizarding world. He planted his feet against the ground and rested his arms on his knees, throwing back his hood to allow the breeze in his hair. Was it all a waste? The fighting? Standing against the dark? Was it worth it? His illusion of Tom had sent the Hogwarts population into a bit of a fit, considering that Tom was supposed to be the Dark Lord student. All of the girls above second year seemed determined to weasel a date about him, and the first and second years looked upon him as a bit of an exciting mystery. The young men of Hogwarts were torn between either befriending him or running away from him. McGonagall was focused on cornering him to ask him about the Dark Lord or his plans. Snape lurked, and it was obvious that he was trying to catch Tom at his earliest opportunity. The only person truly pleased and not cautious or suspicious to see Tom was Dumbledore, as it meant that Harry was there to visit with his grandfather, and he always had something interesting or amusing to share. Harry enjoyed visiting Dumbledore in his room in the hospital wing. Dumbledore had confided that the only reason that he was in the hospital wing was that the rest of the staff of Hogwarts were convinced that Dumbledore had lost all of his faculties. I may be old, my boy, but I am certainly not senile. Just old, too old, some would say. No matter. I suspect that my next adventure is just a little slow in arriving, is all. And the mind isn't what it once was. He had admitted to Harry as they played cards not long after Harry's return for his 7th year. The next adventure will be nice, I suspect, Harry said calmly as he rearranged the cards in his hand into their suits. It has to be better than what we've had before. Think so? Dumbledore asked, setting up the draw pile and playing his first card. Yes, I think so, Harry said, studying his cards and then playing one card, groaning as Dumbledore snatched it up with a happy little chuckle. Grandad, you are too good at this game. Harry sighed, shaking his head. Too old, his little toe. The time with Dumbledore was a time when Harry could relax, since Dumbledore seemed to understand what Harry was going through at the moment. Harry could drop his defenses a bit and just be a teenager, instead of constantly playing a role. Dumbledore had made no comment when he found that Harry had snuck onto his couch one night when Harry couldn't sleep in Gryffindor Tower, only to drift off once he had settled onto the couch. Dumbledore had simply covered him with a throw blanket and woke him before any member of staff could see him there when they brought breakfast. Harry had to admit that having his own pathways through the castle made things like wandering around after curfew a lot easier. He felt sorry for Mr. Filch, as the man was convinced that a student had died and was now haunting the hallways. Harry let him believe it, as the deduction of points would have put Gryffindor into negative digits by his 3rd week of school. His grades were average, and he did nothing to improve them. He did just enough work to get by, and nothing more. It helped that Hermione was busy with school and her duties to Hogwarts, and didn't have a lot of time to watch Harry study as she used to do. He caught her giving him some concerned looks, but nothing had come of them yet. He closed his eyes and lowered his head to stretch his neck. It seemed as though he had a constant headache these days, and the headaches would not relent no matter how much pain-killing potion he ingested. Madame Pomfrey had started asking questions after his 3rd day in a row of requesting the potion, and so he had tasked Creature with purchasing a good supply for him from an apothecary in Hogsmeade. A tendril of magic trailed across his brow, and the corners of his lips twitched up. Magus, Magus, Hogwarts said. Harry acknowledged her and looked up. There was color and light dancing in front of his eyes, and Harry thought he could hear the faintest singing in time with the lights. Hogwarts was singing for him. His breath caught, and he opened himself fully, allowing Hogwarts magic to reach him without a shield. Hogwarts had done this a few times since his arrival in September, and each time reminded Harry that Hogwarts herself cared for him. The song was timeless, lilting and rising without an effort to reach highs, and then dropping to a lower register in seconds. Harry sat and watched, feeling his heavy mood lift as the song and light moved with each other. It felt as though Hogwarts was caressing his face, trying to drive away his headache. "Thank you, Hogwarts," he told the castle. "Magus, you are always home here." The voice and song faded away with that final remark, leaving the lights and music for a few more minutes for him to enjoy himself. Harry heard someone sit down next to him, and he turned to find Hermione studying him. "Harry," she said, "is something bothering you?" "I'm fine, Hermione." Harry told her. "Just watching the show," he said, gesturing towards the castle. "Show." Hermione said, perplexed with the comment. "What show?" Harry turned his head and looked at his friend. She honestly couldn't see what Hogwarts was showing him. He held out his hand to Hermione. "Here, give me your hand." He told her. Hermione put her hand in his, and Harry reached out with his magic. "Yes, what?" He told it what he wanted, and knew he was successful when Hermione gasped. "Harry, what is this?" she asked excitedly, squeezing his hand. "I don't know what the name for it is," he admitted. "I've only seen it recently, but it's beautiful." He shrugged and then looked at his friend. "Do you like it?" "I'm jealous," she confessed. "You get to see this all the time?" "It happens a lot," he told her. "It's best at night. Sometimes I even hear a little music." He relaxed his focus, and Hermione tilted her head as musical tones started up again. "I think I hear it," she said softly. She sat still squeezing his hand as she experienced the sights and sounds of Hogwarts. "It's beautiful." The pair sat for a while longer until the lights and music faded away completely. Harry sent a silent thank you to Hogwarts for allowing him to share it with Hermione. "I have a question, Harry," Hermione said, breaking the silence they had shared. "What's that?" Harry said as she released his hand and stood from the grass. "How are we going to sneak back into the castle? Curfew was some time ago," she told him, looking at her watch. Harry pondered the situation for a moment, hesitant to share his magus passageways just yet. "Wanna do what they did when they landed on Ender." "Camouflage?" Hermione asked. "Fly casual?" Harry answered. "How are your invisibility spells?" She asked him. "They should be stellar." Snape's voice said from the bottom of the hill, "Have you any idea how long I've been looking for the pair of you?" Snape growled. "Approximately an hour." Hermione said calmly, "Good evening, Professor Snape." Hermione said as she left Harry's side and joined Snape. "Come along, Harry. You need sleep. I can tell you're tired." Harry hesitated, not wanting to go to sleep. Snape stalked up the hill and grabbed hold of Harry's arm. "I am not returning to the castle without you. That mad valet of yours has been stalking me, Mr. Potter, and I will not have it. You will order him to leave me alone, or so help me, these days here will be your last." Harry didn't mean to laugh at Snape's words, but for some reason they struck him as extremely hilarious, and he burst into hysterical laughter. Both Snape and Hermione looked at him, astonished. They let him laugh for a few moments before Hermione spoke up. Harry, you okay?" "Sorry," he rasped, still laughing. "It's just that threat really doesn't scare me. I mean, how many times have I nearly died here at school?" He laughed a bit more and told himself to get under control before they locked him up in the hospital wing with Dumbledore as a roommate. Harry's laughter died down, and Snape merely rolled his eyes before pointing towards the castle. Harry smiled again and started down the path, hearing Snape mutter about disobedient out-of-bounds children and their utter disregard for his sanity and well-being. Waiting at the door was an extremely peeved Cassius, drumming his fingers on the wall, and looked generally displeased. "Master Harry, we have some things to discuss," he said calmly, "and what I have said about sitting on the ground with young ladies." Cassius reached out and took hold of Harry's ear, leading him away. Snape and Hermione both burst into giggles as Cassius shifted his grip from ear to arm, grumbling about children, charges, and mortals. No support to be had from either Hermione or Snape. Harry sighed to himself as Cassius led him into an empty classroom and put Harry into a chair. A house elf popped into the room bearing a tray of food which he deposited on a side table before popping back out of the room. "Now, Master Harry, skipping dinner is not permitted. Your father gave very clear instructions. You are to eat. After you eat, you will sleep. If you do not do these things as instructed, you will be removed from this educational institution and returned home to your father." Harry gaped for a moment. "Uncle Cassius, to be honest, you don't really scare me." Harry told him, "Not anymore." "Does your father scare you?" Cassius asked as he set the tray in front of Harry and gestured for him to start. Harry looked down and saw a simple soup, fresh bread rolls, fruit, and some juice. Harry recognized it as the non-alcoholic version of his favorite drink from his time with Dracula. Harry looked up at Cassius with a smile. "No, he doesn't." Harry said, "Really? Well, he should scare you. And so should I. The veneer of civility we wear as a front fools most mortals, but you are smarter than that." Cassius told him, "We are still predators at the end of the day, and you are still very much prey, Master Harry." Harry took a roll and broke it in half, deciding to start with that. He sighed and shook his head. "I don't think anything scares me anymore, to be honest," he admitted to the vampire. "Not really." Cassius went absolutely still, and Harry couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive. He had never seen Cassius completely stop before. It was a spooky effect, and he couldn't help but consider a pathway out of the room. Perhaps through the window. You should remember, Master Harry, that fearing nothing is a very small step towards becoming undead in this realm. It is very easy to justify a number of poor decisions when you feel like that. Do we need to have your doctor come and see you? I could very easily arrange it for you, and I am happy to do so, should you need it." Cassius told him, sounding concerned, "No, thank you, Uncle Cassius. I'm fine." Harry said dismissively, the absolute last thing he needed was Paul showing up at Hogwarts, or seeing Paul at all. Paul would know. He would just know. "That I doubt very much, Master Harry. Now eat, then you will sleep," Cassius said, sitting down across from him. "Now, Master Harry." Harry picked up the spoon and started on the soup, appeasing the vampire sitting across from him. He knew Cassius was suspicious, but there was nothing he could really do to ease the vampire's mind. It was almost over, anyway. No stopping it. At least the soup and bread were good. His teenager stomach, once it discovered food was coming, demanded he eat it all, and he gave in, finishing with the juice. He was suddenly tired, and he glared at Cassius, suspicious. "I did no such thing," Cassius told him, helping him to his feet. "You are simply overtired, and with a full stomach. Let's get you to bed." Cassius gestured for Harry to follow him, and Harry trailed along behind the vampire, too tired to argue. He was in bed a few minutes later, with Cassius standing over him, looking pensive. Harry brushed off the idea that Cassius was worried and allowed his eyes to shut as he fell asleep. Robinson was not having a good day, and it was showing. He had started his day off as any other day. He had breakfast with his parents, ignoring them talking about the fact he wasn't married yet while he read the Daily Prophet before he left the house, and their bickering behind to go to the shop. He opened the shop while he waited for his boss to show up and sorted some inventory into their best locations. His day took a turn for the worse when the bell over the door rang, and a man stepped inside. He went straight to Robinson, relief evident in his face. "Robinson, may I speak to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice urgent. "I am working Williams." He told him. "Besides, we can't speak of that here." Robinson warned him, flicking a glance towards his manager and a few shoppers. "We have to speak now. It is urgent." Williams grasped hold of his upper arm and shook him a bit. "What could be so urgent that you would come find me at work?" Robinson hissed back. "We need to contact the young Dark Lord. Do you know how to do that?" "No, I don't." Robinson admitted to him. Robinson paused before brushing off Williams and going over to his manager. The man agreed to give him a short break for his friend's visit, but he was to hurry back in under half an hour. Robinson led Williams down the street to a semi-private area and rounded on Williams. "What is so important that this couldn't wait?" Robinson demanded of him. "The Dark Lord is mad, Robinson." Williams told him. "Completely lost it." "We already knew that, Williams. He's been that way for a while now." Robinson countered. "If that is all." "Robinson, you need to inform the young Dark Lord that the current Dark Lord's days are numbered. If he doesn't come forward and control the monster, well, he won't have to worry about the monster any longer. We'll follow him, but none of us are following Vol the Dark Lord. Not anymore." Robinson stared at Williams and then shook his head. "I'll tell him if I see him, but it's not as though I know his flu connection. From what the Dark Lord said, the young Dark Lord is currently at school, and I don't know which one. He said before Williams could ask. Well, I would start trying to reach him. The situation has become tenuous, and I won't put it past anyone not to act in their own interests. The last thing we need is someone stepping up and taking over without a care for those of us recruited against our wills. You know what will happen to us if that should happen." Robinson could only nod, knowing that the likelihood of torture and being used as cannon fodder for the Aurors could only follow for him and others like him. He had never wanted to join the Death Eaters, and now he was forced to live with the consequences of the decision made for him. 73. Letters and Lectures. Harry was sitting in his new favorite place at the top of the hill, simply watching Hogwarts dance again. He was spending a lot of time here lately, especially if he couldn't sleep. It was soothing listening to the Lady Hogwarts sing as she danced. He had no doubt now that Hogwarts was female, and she was feeling particularly maternal tonight, as the song seemed closer to a lullaby than any song Harry had heard before. Warming charms were keeping him comfortable enough to sleep if he wanted to, but in all honesty, he didn't care to sleep at the moment. He only wanted to watch Hogwarts for a while. Harry Potter being gone from his bed wasn't anything unusual these days. Anyway, he startled a bit, afraid that Cassius had found him, only to see Hedwig come out of the night towards him. He held up his arm for her and smiled as she perched there, an envelope in one of her talons. "What do you have there, girl?" he asked, taking it from her. She walked up his arm to his shoulder and immediately set about taming his hair as Harry opened the letter. "Dear Tom, please don't think me disrespectful for not using your title, but one can never be too cautious these days. Others have come to me about certain things our boss is doing, and we fear that it may be time to retire him before things become bad for the company. We would like to meet with you regarding future strategies for your leadership and the company. Sincerely, Robinson." Harry sighed and destroyed the letter with a touch of flame. This was the last thing he needed. Hermione wasn't sure what was going on with Harry lately. He was distant, and while she was sure that Cassius was watching him, she could also tell that Harry was keeping something from her. Something was changing in her friend, and she couldn't quite put her finger on what was wrong. She pondered the differences she had experienced between the Harry she knew before and the Harry at Hogwarts now. When she asked, Harry reassured her that everything was all right, just that he had some schoolwork pressing or a letter to Remus to write, or something Cassius needed him to do. It was always an excuse to not spend a lot of time with her. Sure, she could accept those reasons, but those reasons were not Harry. He never seemed to have enough sleep lately. He always acted exhausted, even when he reported sleeping through the night, and he looked fine. She suspected him of using a glamour, but she was sure that he wouldn't give her a straight answer if she asked if he was using one. He was withdrawn. He looked sad when he thought she couldn't see Harry Potter was changing, and she couldn't figure out what to do. She thought of going to Cassius about it, since he was here to take care of Harry, and nothing Harry said about how Cassius wasn't necessary would change that opinion. The vampire was proving difficult to find. She sighed and closed her books to pack them away in her bag before returning to the common room. The library had become her sanctuary lately, since there was so much chatter in the tower that she had trouble concentrating. Harry seemed very popular lately. It was as if all of the girls in Gryffindor had suddenly noticed Harry had grown up somewhere along the way and had to have him. Even Ginny Weasley was participating in this, flirting with Harry every chance she got. Harry seemed to be taking it all in stride, having a smile for each girl before he extracted himself from the conversation. He could ooze charm when he had to, so no girl was left feeling slighted in the least. She had to wonder when he learned that, probably from Dracula, Hermione thought as she left the library behind and headed down the hallway. There was another puzzle she kept turning over in her mind that had nothing to do with Harry. The young dark lord seemed to be hanging around Hogwarts a fair bit. So far, he had been reported as being seen in the Great Hall when no teachers were present, in each dormitory, oddly, not when Hermione had been around, and in several classes, only to disappear when he was noticed by a professor. He had even appeared in Professor Snape's potions classroom once or twice, whispering instructions in people's ears when the professor wasn't looking. Snape, of course, had spotted him almost immediately and chased him down the hallway, only for the boy to disappear around a corner and seen in the next few seconds on the other side of the castle. It seemed that Hogwarts herself was protecting the young Dark Lord by providing him instant access to any location he wished. It was driving the professors mad. Hermione paused when she heard whistling. She turned the corner, curious as to the person loitering in the hallway, and found the subject of her thoughts leaning against the wall, his eyes closed and head back, whistling a tune that sounded vaguely familiar to her ears. "Hello there," she said softly, hoping not to startle him. Her hopes were in vain. He jumped a fair bit and whirled to face her. "Oh, it's you," he said softly. "Sorry, I don't believe we've ever met. Hermione Granger," she said, offering her hand. He simply bowed from the waist and did not take her hand. "A pleasure, Miss Granger. If you'll excuse me, I have somewhere I must be in just a few minutes," he said, turning in the direction she was originally heading. "May I walk with you? We're going the same way," she said, following him. He paused to allow her to catch up, and she felt a little thread of victory go through her. "Long day?" she asked in an absent-minded tone, hoping that he would talk to her. "You could say that," the boy said. He shrugged and sighed. "Not much longer, I'm afraid." "Oh," she questioned, trying to maintain her composure and not scare him off by dancing in the hallway. "Well, dinner will happen in about an hour, so the day's almost over." He shrugged again. "Right." She cast about for a topic and then realized that he had not given a name. "What's your name?" she asked. "Huh, clever witch. Call me Tom," he said, shooting her a fast glance. "Nice to meet you, Tom." She had a feeling that wasn't his real name, and she was getting the same feeling from this boy as she did from Harry when he was trying to keep something from her. They reached Gryffindor Tower before he had a chance to respond, and he simply nodded to her and left, moving down the hallway at a good pace that she wouldn't be able to catch up. She gave the password and entered the tower, mind still on her conversation with Tom. She froze just inside the portrait and almost shrieked in surprise. Harry was sitting on one of the couches in front of the fireplace with a girl on his lap. Closer inspection revealed it to be Parvati Patil. Hermione cleared her throat, feeling her status as a rule keeper in Hogwarts come onto her shoulders. "Oops," Parvati said softly before removing herself from Harry's lap. "I'll see you later, Harry," she told him, pecking him on the lips before leaving the common room. Harry continued to sit there, casually crossing his legs as he looked up at Hermione. "Am I to guess that Cassius is sleeping, and that is why you don't have a vampire hovering over you screaming about a necessary engagement due to your behavior with a young lady?" she asked tartly. "I'm not sure where Cassius is," Harry told her with a shrug. He was a little breathless, and Hermione was pretty sure she could guess the cause. "Well, you may want to move further such activities to a more discreet location in future," she told him. "Uh-huh," he said, lowering his head to the back of the couch and sighing. "Sorry, a little tired. If you didn't have clothes on, I would be sure of the cause of that," she told him, feeling laughter bubble up inside her. She took a deep breath to remain calm. "I'm not going to live this down, am I?" he asked, sounding defeated. "Oh, you wait until I tell your Aunt Petunia," Hermione teased, dancing a bit in place. "She's going to be thrilled." Harry sat up, suddenly recovered from his exhaustion. "You wouldn't." "Oh, try me, Harry Potter," Hermione squeaked and fled out of the portrait hole and back into the hallway when Harry roared and came after her. He did not want Petunia to know anything about Hogwarts except what Harry told her, and Hermione let Harry think that she didn't drop a line to Hermione now and again. They didn't get far because Professor Snape stopped them halfway down the hall and gave them each a detention for being annoying Gryffindors. Dracula sent off his last email message to his last contact today and sighed as he shut down his computer. The plans for the boy were coming along nicely if he had to assess them himself. All of the arrangements he thought were necessary were made and confirmed. Places to go, people to talk to, and staff were ready to be called in at a moment's notice. He could only hope that things would go as planned when the boy made his move. If not, well, he had backup plans, of course, but that didn't mean that Harry would react the way he thought he would, and all of his careful planning would be a waste. Still, though, something was worrying Cassius, and sadly, Harry showed that he was more than adept at keeping things to himself, even with a vampiric guardian hovering over him. Harry was sitting at the breakfast table in the great hall, feeling as though everything he was planning was starting to come together, or falling apart. Whatever came first, really. He toyed with the porridge. In front of him, shooting a frantic look over the shoulder, looking for Cassius. That vampire was making him paranoid. He was certain of it. He popped up whenever he felt like it, and there was no reasoning with him either. It was as though Cassius had stubborn running in his DNA. Hedwig hopped down in front of him, and Harry froze at the sight of a red, angry-looking envelope in her beak. She dropped it in his porridge and beat a hasty retreat, not even bothering to wait for a bit of bacon. Harry gulped, certain that he knew what this letter was about. Hermione hissed next to him, covering her ears. Harry cast a silencing bubble around himself and opened the letter. Harry James Potter, just you wait until I get my hands on you, young man. I knew something was different when you left for school, but without my permission? Not that I'm ungrateful for letting me keep my mind during those transformations, but you could have warned me. We need to have a very, very long talk about playing around with magic you don't understand, or haven't tested, or have you? Consider yourself grounded the first week you are home from school this summer. Your aunt wants to say a few words. Harry, I understand why you did what you did, but you should really think things like this through. Or ask first. Remus is very grateful, I am sure, for giving him some control over this, but at the same time, Harry, you didn't ask. That, I think, is most upsetting. You didn't ask, just like Dumbledore didn't ask when he placed you with me. That's limiting people's choices, Harry. Not good, nephew of mine. Remus and I have discussed this, and I think we agree that you should be punished for this, even though you did it with best intentions. We'll talk consequences when you come home for break. Here's Remus again. Harry, I want to tell you that I love you. This is a tremendous gift you have given me. I'm upset about how you went about it, not that you did it. We'll talk when you get home for the holidays. In the meantime, study hard, behave, and have fun. With those ending calm words, the letter tore itself up and erupted into flames. Harry canceled his spell and saw Hermione staring at him with wide eyes. What? He asked. You are going to teach me that spell. Hermione told him. So, what did your aunt and Remus want to yell at you about? Not ready to talk about it yet, Hermione, but it got better towards the end. I did something before I went away to school, and well, they found out about it. He told her with a shrug. Oh, she arched an eyebrow. Experiment with drinking, which I will probably never do again. Harry told her. Now, what do we have this morning? He asked, hoping to redirect you. Well, I'd say you got off lightly, if all they did was send you a howler. Hermione said, sharply, the one time my parents caught me even trying it before, well, I would have preferred the howler. I felt a little like a worm on the ground. She paused and looked at Harry. It's the disappointment that gets to me more than anything else. Yeah, me too. Harry agreed. He braced himself as Hermione seemed to be gathering herself for a discussion. Harry, I think we need to tell Dash. Hey guys, Neville said as he sat down across from them. Good porridge this morning. Every morning, Nevada, just like always. Harry said, pushing back from the table and standing. I forgot my potions book. I'll see you guys in class." He told the pair of them. Hermione watched her friend leave, and she frowned. He does know that we have potions tomorrow, right?" Neville asked as he filled a bowl with porridge. "I'm sure he does." Hermione said, "I'll catch up with you later." Hermione left the Great Hall behind and checked the time. Perhaps it was time to write to someone about Harry and his changes. Chapter 74. It was just after midnight, and Harry Potter was breaking the rules of Hogwarts again. Of course, if anyone checked beds in Gryffindor Tower, Harry Potter was fast asleep right where he was supposed to be. It was Tom lurking in the halls of Hogwarts. Tom had no bed in Hogwarts. And well, you couldn't yell at a student for being out of bed when he had no bed to call his own in the dormitories. Harry, in his guise as Tom, had full run of the halls this late, and as long as he stayed away from the Night Owl portraits and a certain poltergeist that was currently in the Great Hall on the other side of the school, thank you for the information, Hogwarts, he was able to have the time to himself. Cassius was likely following him, but he was content to stay away for now and give Harry the solitude he was seeking. He wasn't sure why, but it felt like something was coming or that something was going to happen. He'd had a rough few weeks. He had been depressed over how his life was going to end, and the fact that he was feeling pretty powerless over it all. Cassius had sat him down one evening and wouldn't let him leave the room until he had gotten the full story out of him. Harry still wasn't sure how it had happened. He was blaming it all on spooky vampire powers or perhaps a potion of some sort, but Cassius had heard the whole thing from start to finish, including Blaise being the Dark Lord student, and Blaise's final message to him about how things would end. It was Cassius's final comment that seemed to help more than anything else. "Master Harry, I'm going to tell you something someone told me. Long before I joined your father's court, it is not the amount of time you have left on this earth, but how you make use of that time that matters in the end. It is normal to feel sad, angry, or upset when faced with the idea of your own death, especially at a young age, but death comes to us all, even vampires. Make use of the time you have left to enjoy yourself and leave a good mark on the world. Why else exist? Act as though you have all the time in the world, and you may surprise yourself." It had taken about 4 or 5 days before he started thinking about what he would do if he did have all of the time in the world. He'd even sat down and made a list of all of the places he would see and the things he would do someday in a notebook. He'd written out his ideas on how his career would go, including where he would go to school after Hogwarts and what subjects he would study. He picked The Phantom of the Opera as his first musical and then transitioned there to other musicals like Les Miserables, Jesus Christ Superstar, Sweeney Todd, Miss Saigon, Evita, and The Scarlet Pimpernel. He wrote out every wish he had for his future life, including visits home to Aunt Petunia and Uncle Remus. He doubted he would live to see it, but he had a feeling that Remus and Petunia would one day marry and then spoil any children Dudley had. He even wrote out what being an uncle, even though they would technically be cousins, would be like, and how he would spoil Dudley's children in between productions with outings and trips. He even dared to dream a little about having a family of his own with a yet unimagined wife, and the children calling Petunia Gran. He had used magic to lock away these secrets so that no one else could read what he had wished for, and then made his peace with the idea that he might not see that future. If it happened, then great, but if it didn't happen, well, those thoughts he kept locked away as well to avoid thinking about it. He also decided that while he was here, he would have as much fun as possible before things caught up to him. That had taken close to a week to reason out in his mind. Why have fun when things were so scary? Why bother crawling out of the apathy? Hermione had helped in her usual way. She ambushed him. She had been trying to get him alone for days before she finally managed to catch him. She had waited for him after dinner one night, and using Cassius's help, dragged him to the room of requirement. He protested a bit as she latched onto his robes, but she marched him down the hallways with Cassius close at their heels and doing nothing to help Harry get away, no matter how many frantic looks Harry gave him. He did remove Harry from Hermione's grip, but only tossed him over his shoulder and carried him down the hallways with Hermione following beside them, her face glittering with determination. Harry still wasn't sure if he was going to forgive the vampire for his lack of inaction that evening. He was supposed to be protection, ostensibly, but it only seemed that he acted as bodyguard when he felt the situation warranted such actions. Otherwise, he made scandalized noises when he thought Harry was doing something outside the realm of what he considered acceptable and stalked the potions professor for fun. Hermione followed them into the roar and came over to face Harry, where he had fallen when Cassius deposited him on a couch filled with too many throw pillows to be safe. She stood before him, her face grim, and put her hands on her hips. "Now, Harry, do I have to call or write to your Aunt Petunia and tell her that Hogwarts is a terrible environment for you?" "A terrible environment?" he asked, still perplexed at what had just happened to him. "Harry, contrary to popular belief, I'm not completely oblivious. You used to do fun things. You used to play chess and sneak out and Quidditch." She seized on this last word and dropped onto a stool in front of him. "You don't play Quidditch anymore. Harry, you're not enjoying yourself here. You were so much better at St. Jude's. Here, it seems like you're just going through the motions, and some days not even that. I can't help but wonder if St. Jude's or another school would be a better place for you. Perhaps your celebrity, or being away from home, or your adoption is just too much for you right now. Don't think we haven't noticed you not really eating or sleeping. I've more than noticed it." Cassius grumbled from the corner. He was in his usual pose of disapproving vampire, arms crossed and eyes narrowed at his charge. "Yes, thank you, Cassius." Hermione returned. "You're not eating much. I can tell you're not sleeping well, and you're not doing things you enjoy. Even your grades are slipping beyond their usual level. And don't say you're fine." Harry closed his mouth. He had been about to say that he was fine. Hermione knew him too well. Better not to make her angrier than she already was, especially when she was in this mood. "I'm worried for you, Harry. While I'm glad you're back at Hogwarts, if this is the wrong place for you, then maybe we should find you someplace better. Someplace you can be happy." She reached out and took his hands. The pressure of her fingers made something in him relax. He felt his hands open and close a few times, and her hands stayed there, waiting for him to decide what he wanted. He took a few deep breaths, played her words in his head again, and then sighed. "Hermione, could I have a hug?" he asked finally, his voice rough. Hermione joined him on the sofa and brought her arms around him. He rested his forehead on her shoulder for a few minutes, but he knew the hug lasted a long time. "Thank you for being such a brilliant friend," he finally said, trying to pull away. She let him go, but she took his hand again and squeezed. "You're right." he said after a few minutes. I haven't been really happy here, but it's just for a year. I thought I could do it, but it's all feeling a little pointless. He admitted to her. What do you need, Harry? How can I help? She asked. I'm not sure. He shrugged and leaned back against the sofa, pulling her with him. I think I know what you might need right now, she said softly, as though it was a secret. Harry looked at her, curious. A little fun. I don't think that dash. A pillow hit him in the face, and he heard her giggle. You realize that this means war? He asked, finding his own pillow to attack his friend. Surrender to my wrath. Hermione tossed 3 pillows in rapid-fire succession, while Harry climbed on top of the sofa to dodge Hermione's attacks, taking the higher ground. The boy who lived never surrenders. He had frozen at that point, and Hermione had won by default when her last pillow managed to knock him over. He tumbled over the back of the sofa and hit the ground. He stayed where he was, staring up at the ceiling above him, blinking. Harry, you okay? Hermione asked, peering over the back of the sofa, where Harry was sitting in a heap. The boy who lives never surrenders, he repeated. Me, I think it's going to be okay. He finally said after a few minutes. I think I'm going to be okay. Well, until the Christmas holiday, when I'll be grounded for life. He admitted, Aunt Petunia is not impressed with my behavior from the summer. Well, you know what this means, Skywalker. Hermione said, pushing her hair out of her face. She had worked up a bit of a sweat during their pillow fight, and hair clung to her forehead. What? He asked. We asked Cassius if he'd be willing to infiltrate the kitchen and see if they have your favorite ice cream. A pop from the other side of the room showed that Hogwarts had heard them and provided ice cream. Mint chocolate chip was there, along with vanilla and toppings. How can you like boring ice cream flavors? Harry asked as he went over to inspect the table. Boring. You take that back. The two ended up resuming their pillow fight for a brief 5-minute skirmish before Cassius called a halt, stating he would send the ice cream back to the kitchen if they could not conduct themselves in a better manner. Harry had snorted, but they subsided long enough to fix dishes of ice cream and collapse back on the sofa, discussing various Star Wars theories like, what if Vader had caught Luke on Hoth? And what if Yoda had already been dead when Luke arrived on Dagobah? Harry's last theory of what if Vader had found Luke when he was small made Hermione pull out a quill and parchment. He allowed her to write furiously for about 20 minutes before he asked Cassius for some real food, as he hadn't eaten much at dinner, and the ice cream was not sitting well at all. The two friends spent the rest of the evening together, well past curfew, while Hermione wrote out a story in which Luke had lost his Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen at the small age of 5, and through some fluke had managed to be transferred to an orphanage just a week before Lord Vader made a state visit for the cameras and Empire propaganda. She even let Harry read it before he and Hermione had to sneak through the hallways and into Gryffindor Tower at 2 o'clock in the morning, giggling and avoiding Mrs. Norris on her prowl. Since that night with Hermione, his mood had improved a bit. It was still day by day, and sometimes hour by hour to work at it, but it was happening. He went flying when he felt a little low and allowed Cassius to remind him to eat if Harry was drifting and ignoring the world. Cassius turned out to be extremely helpful, reminding his young charge of his earlier words of enjoying the life he had. Cassius was always there to give him suggestions about ways to manage his feelings, and even went running with him in the pre-dawn light. The first run turned out to be absolutely miserable for Harry, considering he had slacked off of his running since school had started, but he was starting to gain back some of his stamina, even in spite of the cold. It was bitterly cold in the mornings now, but a cup of hot tea was always waiting on him when they returned from their exercise sessions. Hermione was by his side most of the time to offer her support, although she declined to join them for their exercise sessions, and he and Hermione had started a Star Wars club for Hogwarts students. Only Muggleborns and Half-Bloods had joined it at this point, but the group met once a week to discuss their favorite parts of the movies and the books. Some of the students had novels about Star Wars, and others, like Hermione, wrote their own stories. Harry had discovered that other students around him loved the movies and could quote entire scenes with him. Justin could do a pretty good Yoda impression, which confused several pureblood students when they had passed the table where the club was sitting. "Not the club you're looking for," Hermione said, waving her hand like Obi-Wan Kenobi. The group of purebloods looked even more confused at that, and the entire club ended up laughing for a good 5 minutes about their confusion, reenacting the scene a few times for fun. It was good to have friends that liked what he liked, and didn't think it odd for him to know about things from the Muggle world. Things weren't perfect, and he still felt poorly from time to time, but overall it was getting better. Now, he was just enjoying the solitude of the empty hallways and trying to figure out what he wanted to do. He felt as though things were coming together and falling apart at the same time. The message from Robinson was annoying, as there hadn't been any more detail forthcoming and hadn't had any follow-up to that message. Also concerning was the fact that the Dark Lord hadn't called for him in the past few weeks. He wanted to go and see the man to see what was happening, but then again, that was an easy way to get caught if he wasn't careful. He never knew what we would be walking into when visiting the Dark Lord. It could very well be something he truly didn't want to see or experience, and according to Robinson's last message to him, there were followers who were not pleased with the Dark Lord or the direction that things were going. Harry paused at the top of the stairwell and wasn't sure what to do. Was he sleepy? No, not really. Maybe a cup of tea. He wandered down the staircase towards the kitchen and hoped he wouldn't wake anyone. It was just after midnight, and he hoped that no house elves would wake up to help him. He could manage a kettle over a fire just fine. Halfway down the staircase, a small door lit with torchlight opened in the wall. It seemed that Hogwarts was giving him a shortcut. A quick little trip down the stairs brought him directly into the kitchen itself, where the fires were lit on the stove. He found a kettle easily, filled it with water, and set it on the stove to heat. While he was waiting, a small team of elves appeared, all smiling at him. "May we help Harry Potter?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake anyone." No. Harry Potter, we're the night shift. We work all night, and then some elves work during the day. We come to do the daily baking and the cleaning in the hallways when wizards aren't around." The lead house elf glanced at the stove and then smiled at Harry. "Harry Potter wants tea." What happened next was a little astonishing. One house elf nudged Harry towards a set at what would normally be the Gryffindor table. Another dashed into another room. Another gathered dishes, and the oldest one, and the one that had spoken to Harry, made the water boil. Within just 2 minutes, Harry had a cup of tea steeping in front of him and a plate of biscuits at his hand. The older elf simply patted him on the arm as he passed, and Harry sat back as half of the elves set to work in the kitchen, while the other half disappeared, presumably to work in the hallways. Harry settled in with his tea cup and took a biscuit. Some calories now would not go amiss. After 3 biscuits and as many cups of tea, Harry thanked the house elves several times over and left the kitchen behind. Master Harry, Cassius melted out of the stonework and joined him in the hallway. "Hello, Cassius," he said softly, walking in the dark. "Perhaps it is time for you to go to bed." He questioned. Harry paused for a few seconds before finally nodding. "Good idea. I think the tea the house elves gave me is making me a little sleepy." Cassius simply tipped his head once and walked Harry up to his dorm room. By the time they were there, Harry was suspecting something additional was in his teacup. He changed for bed and dropped into the blankets, muttering a sleepy good night as Cassius pulled the curtains shut around him. He could see Cassius high-five a house elf through the crack of the material hanging around him. It's a conspiracy, he had time to think before he drifted off to sleep. It turned out the tea had been just a special blend that was made to help people get to sleep easier. Nothing conspiratorial had happened other than Cassius making the suggestion to a house elf about which tea to serve young Master Harry. Now, there was a cup waiting for Harry every night just after he closed his school books for the night. Usually, Cassius made sure there was enough for his friends as well, and sometimes even the biscuits were included. It ended up being a nice way to transition from schoolwork to bedtime, gathered around the fire and pondering how to get the recipe from the house elves to share with his aunt. He had a feeling Dudley would like these biscuits. Afterwards, instead of wandering the halls with insomnia, he was more apt to fall asleep after just a little while in bed. Many days passed this way, and suddenly Harry found that the 1st of October was upon them. And with that, a surprise announcement at breakfast. Minerva McGonagall stood and cleared her throat, which caused all of the students to pause in their meals and look up at her. "Thank you for your attention this morning, students. I wish to announce several upcoming activities for the month of October, which will all ultimately lead to our first annual masquerade dance. Please see your common room bulletin board for details and sign-up sheets concerning our first talent show here at Hogwarts, as well as club sports. Club sports teams will be made up of players of all houses and will not compete for the House Cup. These are merely teams for fun. If you have any questions, your head of house will be able to help." Voices broke out around them, excited about the talent show and the sports teams. Dean Thomas immediately started making noise about a football team and dashed off to check the bulletin board posting to see if football was offered at all. Harry hoped so. He had played a few games at St. Jude's and enjoyed it. Maybe he would join the games as well and get some more exercise. He mentioned it to Hermione, and she nodded, but then shared her own opinion. "Well, I think you should sign up for the talent show," Hermione said from next to him, writing on a piece of parchment. "Did she ever quit studying?" "Oh, really?" he said in response, nibbling on his toast. "Why do you think that?" "You could do a soliloquy," Hermione said absently. Her nose was so far in a book that Harry was concerned it would never emerge. A glance at the page made him blink. He had no idea what that was even supposed to be. Where did her parchment go? "I don't think that's a good idea," Harry said. "Why not?" Neville asked. "Lots of people will just goof off on stage. From what I hear, you're a good actor." Harry gave Hermione a sideways glance at this, but her nose was still in the book, ignoring him. "My talents are being exaggerated," he said, shaking his head. "It'll be fun." Neville said, "I think I might do a plant show of some kind." Neville's thoughts turned inward, and Harry swallowed the last bit of toast. He gathered up his bag and headed towards class, grateful for the escape from his friends. He had a feeling that this wouldn't be the last he heard of it. He was right. It seemed that everyone was extremely excited about the talent show. Professor Flitwick took points during charms class, since he had been interrupted more than 5 times about charms that students could use for their various talents. He had warned them all that class was class, and then they continued to ask for charms. After being interrupted so many times, he informed them that office hours would be sufficient for their needs should they feel the need to do so, but that they must focus on class now. No one made a peep in Professor Snape's class. The man barely made eye contact as he stalked about the classroom. The class did start off with a simple warning that any discussions of anything outside of their potions curriculum for the day would result in detentions for the rest of the school term. Everyone took him at his word, and not a whisper was heard for the entire class. Harry had never been more relieved to be released for his free period before lunch. He headed outside for his free period and cast a warming charm on himself as he settled beneath the tree. Sunshine always helped his mood, and he found himself wanting to enjoy outside more. That, and it was as far from the library as he could get at the moment. He knew Hermione had to be prowling the stacks of the library by now. He jumped when he noticed Cassius sitting beside him. "Isn't sunlight bad for vampires?" Harry asked him. "Is sitting on the ground expressly forbidden?" He returned, quirking an eyebrow at Harry. "No." Harry snapped back. "Well then." Cassius placed his hands behind his head and leaned back against the tree right next to Harry. The pair sat in silence for a while. Harry listened to the birds around them and then pulled out one of his textbooks to read for his next lesson. He always found that reading ahead in the textbook helped him understand the classes better. Skye from St. Jude's had taught him that little trick when he was attempting to catch up to the other students. He still used it here at Hogwarts, now that he was focused on working on his grades. He let his other hand trail in the grass for a few minutes as he read his next lesson, and then paused when he felt parchment under his fingertips. He looked down and saw it was a letter addressed to him. "A letter from your father," Cassius told him. "You missed your owl. She was extremely unimpressed with your ignoring her when she made the delivery. Thank you, Cassius. I'll have to visit her with some treats later. I was really focused on my reading." Harry said, setting his book aside, "that it's good to see you more yourself these last few days." Cassius told him, "I'm not 100% yet, but I'm starting to feel better." He shared as he picked up the letter and broke the seal. Beautiful script written in blue ink traveled down the page. "Dear son, I hope that you are well, and that life at school is everything you wanted it to be. I still felt unsure about your plans to return to the Wizards, but it is what you wanted. I have had contact with almost all of the people you met at your party this summer, and can I humbly say, you made me very proud with your deportment and the results that came from the meetings. Almost everyone has requested future meetings with you for their own magical communities and have invited us for a visit. My child, I am arranging your grand tour with great anticipation. I have spoken to your aunt and advisor, and they have agreed that a gap year may do you some good after you finish at Hogwarts. I am eager to show you the wider world if you would like that. Of course. We'll start with summer in France. The places in Paris I have to show you. I am sure you'll love it. Of course. We'll have to stop by the dignitaries' offices when we arrive in their country, but sometimes having a friend in that country is all to the good. They can take you places you would never have sought out yourself, and they keep you away from the tourist traps as well. I spent close to a decade in Paris a few years back. It's a delightful place. Cassius tells me that you're having a bit of trouble sleeping. Please consult the school nurse about the issue. If it continues, I will send your doctor to you. The same with your eating, my child. You must take care of yourself. I know you may find it difficult, but use the resources around you. Cassius, the school nurse, your friends. A great many people care about you. I wanted to let you know that I'll be joining your school for your first annual masquerade. Cassius informed me of the upcoming event, and I couldn't pass up the chance to see Hogwarts. I did receive an invitation, but I'm not sure about the host. Do you know who sent me the invitation? Either way, I have given my response that I will be there. It'll give me a chance to check on my child. With love, your father, Vlad. Harry stared at the letter for a few minutes and then folded it back into its envelope. A visit from his adopted father while at school. What could go wrong? So much, and you know it, Potter. His mind told him in a whisper. What does your father say? Cassius's voice broke Harry out of his thoughts. Oh, something about a grand tour, dignitaries, and he is coming to the masquerade. Harry gathered his school books up and shoved them into his bag. Guess I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to wear. He muttered to himself. Oh, maybe something from that book that got turned into a musical. Cassius said. Harry stopped and blinked at him. Which one? He asked. He couldn't help but laugh a bit at Cassius's blank face. Wait, there's more than one. The vampire asked in confusion. You're how old again? Harry asked, walking away. Surely you've seen a musical or two? A musical? Men and women standing around and singing in each other's faces. Cassius gave a theatrical shiver. Not for me, Master Harry, never. Harry laughed and started up the hill towards the school, listening to Cassius grumble about how he would never set foot in a theater for such a purpose. Harry thought about the suggestion of basing his masquerade choice on a musical and grinned. I don't like that look, Master Harry. Cassius said with a suspicious tone. I know what I am going to choose, and I think Hermione may be interested in it as well. Harry said. Cassius leaned against the stone wall of the corridor and studied Harry. Oh, do tell. Nah, I want to see if she's willing first, or if she has another idea. I'm going to go find her. Harry waved to Cassius and slipped through one of the secret passages Hogwarts herself made for him. He came out of the passage directly in front of the library and slipped inside. He found Hermione with a barricade of books stacked up around her, her quill scribbling across the parchment in front of her. Her hair had gone frizzy and wild, which meant she had been running her hands through her hair while reading. Hey, me, Harry said softly as he dropped into the seat next to her. Hey, yourself, she said in response. You all right? She asked. Fine, thanks. Did you have an idea of what you're going to wear to the masquerade? He asked. Not yet. I thought of a few things, but honestly, I haven't decided. Some of the ideas are strictly Muggle, and I don't fancy spending half the evening telling most of the school what I'm supposed to be, and then they still wouldn't understand it because they don't have the cultural context. She paused for a moment. It's extremely frustrating being stuck between two worlds. Have you thought of inviting Victor? Harry asked, pulling out his own schoolbooks and nudging a few of hers aside to give him space to work. I think you have a plan in mind, Hermione said, mischief in her eyes. A plan? Harry couldn't help smiling at her. Whatever gave you that idea? Tell me. Hermione hissed in a whisper. Any help you could give would be extremely welcome. I am floundering a bit, she admitted to him. Harry smiled, pulled a scrap of parchment towards him, and wrote out a title of a book that he knew Hermione would know. She studied the title with a frown of confusion and then hugged him. Perfect, she said in response. Wait, why do we need Victor? She asked. I can't play two different people. Hermione. Besides, I want someone at your side for the whole of the evening. I'm going to be busy. If you think you're going to use that idea to scare the living daylights out of people, Harry James Potter dash. Let me live a little. They were shortly tossed out of the library due to excessive noise. Cassius could only snicker at Hermione's indignation at having been removed from the library and banned for the weekend. Harry had to wonder how Cassius had managed to find him, and why the vampire wouldn't leave him alone. Let me remain a little mysterious, Cassius told him in response to Harry's repeated pleas to learn how he did it. Besides, you have other things to worry about. What do you mean? Let me remain a little mysterious. Harry jerked awake and sighed. While it had been some time since Voldemort had called him, he had hoped that Voldemort would realize that 1, Harry was young and needed sleep, 2, Harry had to sneak out of school, and 3, middle-of-the-night calls made everything difficult. I'm coming. Harry grumbled under his breath. He yawned and stretched as he got out of bed. He's going to wait on me. He mumbled to himself as he walked into the bathroom. It was definitely the middle of the night, just after 2 a.m, from what a tempest spell told him. Ugh. Harry didn't want to be awake right now. He splashed some water on his face and ran his hands through his hair. He stumbled back into the dormitory and rummaged in his chest for some clothes. His tired brain caught up with him. Where was Cassius? Cassius, he whispered. The vampire did not appear. Harry shrugged to himself. Maybe he finally cornered Snape somewhere. Harry shuddered and didn't allow his thoughts to go beyond that. He did not want to know what the vampire got up to while Harry was sleeping. He really didn't want to know. Ignorance is bliss. Harry gathered everything he needed and slipped down the stairs and out of Gryffindor Tower. Hogwarts made things easy for him and created a passageway that led right out of the building and opened up just outside the gates. He called up his guise as Tom and pulled on his Death Eater robes. He placed his mask and then went to Voldemort. Upon arriving, he had to pause. There was no one else around, no other Death Eaters that he could see. He went inside the house and saw darkened hallways. He reached out with his magic and discovered that Voldemort was the only person in the house. Harry went down the hallway and then up the stairs towards the bedrooms. Everything was dark and quiet, and Harry reached out with his magic to try to figure out what was going on. No threat that he could detect, at least, not through magic. He went to Voldemort's bedroom and rapped on the door. A weak come-in filtered through the door. Harry opened the door and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, but he could see the figure in the bed clear enough. Sir, he asked, confused. My child. The voice sounded happy, and Harry moved forward to look at the person in the bed. Harry wasn't sure who this person was, but He was not the Voldemort he knew. He looked ill, drained. "Hello, sir." "My child, what are you doing here?" Voldemort sat up in bed and shifted so that he was facing Harry. "You called me, sir." Harry said in response, slightly confused. "Did I?" Voldemort said, more to himself than to Harry. "I did, yes. I was thinking about you. Must have called you. Now what was it?" Harry closed his eyes. "I did this," he thought. "I ruined his mind. Do you recall last summer?" Voldemort asked suddenly. "When you offered me lessons?" Harry asked in response. "Yes, sir, I do." "Do you remember that I used to punish you?" The man asked softly, as though he was afraid to hear the answer. Harry looked him over once, anger spiking at his punishments that were full-out torture sessions. "Yes." Voldemort's face winced at Harry's answer. "You have every right to be angry with me," Voldemort said, surprising Harry. "I regret what I did to you, how I treated you," Voldemort said, reaching out to take Harry's hand. "I apologize for hurting you. My mind isn't what it was. Is it?" "I'm afraid not, sir," Harry said. Voldemort didn't say anything for a long while, just holding on to Harry's hand. Silence settled around them, broken only by the creaking of the old house around them. It was chilly in the room. Of course, it was early October. It was becoming colder and colder at night. "Would you like me to light a fire, sir?" Harry asked the man. "A fire?" Voldemort asked. "Yes, please, that would be nice. I tried earlier." Voldemort's voice faded away into silence again. Harry looked over at the fireplace and saw logs stacked haphazardly there. He reached out with his magic and rearranged the logs. A thought later, and the room was not as dark with the fire in the great burning. A few cracks and pops made Voldemort jerk. "Sir." Harry moved his chair so that he was perpendicular to the bed. "I'm going to try something to help your head. Can you rest back against your pillows?" Voldemort followed the request and sighed, allowing his eyes to slip closed. Harry entered the man's mind and had to swallow hard as he looked around. It's worse than before, he thought, as he studied the holes and gaps he had seen before. Some of the edges appeared blackened, and some of it was inflamed as though infected. "He's in pain." Harry called up his magic and tried to describe what he wanted to do. The response was unenthusiastic, as though Harry was wasting time and energy on a cause too far gone. "Please." He watched as several places started to light up around him. Some of the inflammation died away before his eyes, but most of the blackened areas remained. He opened his eyes to see Voldemort studying him. "You did something," he said softly. "I feel clearer." "Yes, I'm not sure how much help it will be, but it may make you feel better," Harry told him. "Thank you, child." Voldemort closed his eyes, and Harry felt him slip into sleep. Harry stood softly. "Okay, fates, what am I waiting for from him?" Harry was still waiting to be able to end everything, including the prophecy. He was tired. He set a protective ward around the fire to ensure that the house wouldn't burn down in case Voldemort's magic made things chaotic, and then left the house behind. It was dawn already. How much time had he spent in Voldemort's head? He went back to school and stumbled up the secret passages to Gryffindor dorm, ecstatic to remember that today, was Saturday. He could sleep in for a while and not experience his usual zombie-like state. He paused just outside his dorm room and made sure his robes were not Death Eater robes. He slipped through the dorm room and into his bed, sighing as he relaxed. It was time to sleep. Sleep was good. Master Harry? Harry was sure he had just closed his eyes. Master Harry? You need to wake up now. Cassius's voice said from beside his bed. No, Harry muttered and rolled over. He was not moving from his bed. You have an appointment and must get up. Please don't make me dress you. I know you don't enjoy that. Harry opened one eye and glared at Cassius. I do not have an appointment, Harry argued, burying himself back into his blankets. Yes, you do. There's breakfast. Cassius's voice turned sing-song, as though food would make Harry leave his bed. Is there coffee? He grumbled. Of course. Cassius sounded offended. What do you take me for, an idiot? Cassius paused, and then said, Don't answer that. Harry snorted and sat up. He blinked a few times. I'm only getting up because there is coffee. Harry yawned, stretched, and got out of bed. Do I have time for a shower? He asked. Yes, Cassius sounded amused. Harry arched an eyebrow at the vampire. But when no further commentary came, Harry gathered his shower things and went into the bathroom. He took a cold shower to wake himself up and then got dressed. He fought with his hair and then gave up the comb to Cassius. Somehow, he was able to tame Harry's hair for him. Vampire magic. It has to be vampire magic. Harry stumbled after the vampire down the stairs and out of the dormitory. So, where are we going? He asked. He was finally awake enough to be curious. An appointment. This way. Fine. Be all mysterious. I don't care. Maybe I can take a nap later. A nap would be great. Here we are. I'll leave you now, Master Harry. Your appointment is in there. I'm not needed. With those words, Cassius turned and then was gone from Harry's sight. Vampires are weird. Harry commented to the air. He didn't care if Cassius heard him or not. Vampires were weird. Harry decided that there was nothing that he could do but keep the appointment that Cassius seemed to have made for him. He rapped on the door and went into the room. Hello, Harry. The voice was familiar, warm, and overall, so very welcome. Chapter 75. Paul. Hello, Harry, Paul said as he turned from the window. How? I mean, it's great to see you, but you're here, and I'm confused. Harry leaned back against the door. He wasn't sure what he was feeling at the moment. He was happy to see Paul, but he was also scared. Confused? Surprised? I believe I can answer that. Khalid's voice said from the other side of the room. Harry looked over, and his face said, Get on with it. Some information made it to our father's desk, and he arranged this, or rather, asked me to arrange it. He moved forward and then hugged Harry to him, hand smoothing Harry's hair. I'm sorry you haven't been well, little brother. Take your time. I'll make sure your doctor gets home when he needs to, he said softly in Harry's ear. Khalid's hand ruffled Harry's hair, and then Khalid nudged Harry away from the door. He slipped out, and the door closed behind him without a sound. Harry felt a fair number of spells he didn't know that Khalid knew. He and Paul would not be disturbed, even if the castle fell down around them. Harry wasn't sure what to do. He stood there for a few minutes, and then Paul walked over to him. He opened his arms, and Harry stepped into them. This was Paul. Paul was here, and it was good. The embrace was quick but firm. The older man stepped back and rested a hand on Harry's shoulder. He gave Harry's shoulder a light squeeze and then gestured towards an armchair next to the window. Harry nodded and dropped into the chair with a sigh. The room they were in was comfortable, cozy, even. The armchairs were full and soft with pillows. Tiny tables that held a number of different things were available. Harry saw a chess set on one and art supplies on another. A tray popped up on the table between them as Paul sat down and then studied Harry. "Let's eat some breakfast, and then we'll talk, okay, Harry?" Paul asked. Harry nodded, and Harry picked up one of the plates. This must be from one of the house elves who knew his eating habits. Fresh fruit and crepes were on offer, along with a cup of coffee, fixed exactly how Harry liked it. He was not surprised to note that Paul's tea was made how he normally took it, and his crepes had a drizzle of chocolate on them instead of the strawberries that Harry was going to enjoy. They finished their meals in a few minutes. The feeling in the room was a little awkward. They both knew that Paul was there for a reason, and that didn't make breakfast any easier for either of them. Harry finally finished his crepes and set his mostly empty plate back on the tray. Paul's quickly followed, and he jumped a little when the plates disappeared and tea and biscuits appeared in their place. "I could get used to that," Paul said, gesturing towards the tray. His notebook and pen appeared as usual, and he opened to a blank page. It was comforting in its familiarity. Paul had always had something to write with when working with Harry. "What's happened, Harry?" Paul asked when Harry remained silent for a full minute. "It feels like everything is falling apart," Harry said softly. "Like nothing I do is right." Harry pulled his knees up to his chest and then rested his chin on them. "I'm sad and tired, and I get these headaches and stomach aches. I feel like I want to cry, but I don't know why. I'm angry and I feel like screaming. I want to punch the walls around me and tell people to leave me alone. Except I can't. What do you do when these feelings happen?" Paul asked softly. Harry shrugged in response. "Harry, what am I supposed to do, Paul?" Harry responded, "I can't. I don't." He rested the side of his head on his knees and sighed. "You do sound tired, Harry." Paul told him. Harry shrugged in response. "What is it that you can't or don't?" Harry tapped his toes on the cushion and shrugged again. Paul sat back in his chair and poured out tea, adding sugar for Harry. He set the cup closer to Harry and then placed 2 biscuits on the plate. Harry ignored it for a moment and then picked up the cup. "I don't know." Paul studied Harry for a few minutes while Harry sipped at his tea and then ate a biscuit. Harry knew this trick. Paul would often just stay quiet until Harry cracked and spoke about what was really bothering him. "I don't think I belong here anymore," Harry finally said, his voice thick and raspy. Paul set aside his notebook and pen. He sat forward to rest a hand on Harry's knee. "It's okay, Harry," Paul said in response. "It's okay to feel this way. I thought everything would be wonderful, that things would magically feel better. You know, that I would come back and everything would be fine and I would be fine, but it's not, and I'm not. I hate it. I just really, really hate it." "What do you hate, Harry?" Paul asked. "Everything." Harry dropped his tea cup back into its saucer and pushed himself up from the chair. "I hate everything. I hate the magic that I'm learning that has absolutely no purpose. I hate that I've wasted the last 6 years learning magic that has no practical uses. I hate the idea of being an Auror. I hate the whispers around me. I hate the wizarding world, okay? I hate being famous here. I hate the fact that people look at me like I'm someone special, that I'm different. I hate the war. I hate Dumbledore for what he's done. I hate McGonagall for what she hasn't done. I hate being adopted because the adoption was for more than one reason. Even if Dracula thinks I don't know that. But hey, being adopted by the vampire has to be a good thing, right? Except now I have these people who can see through me and, if necessary, make me do things that I don't want to do, but I'll think I want to because that's how it works. And I hate it when they're right. I hate being underestimated all of the time. I hate my aunt for not loving me before all of this crap happened. I hate my uncle for what he did. And I hate Remus for not being there before. And Dudley for what he's done. I hate you because you're Muggle and you stay in the Muggle world, but you're the best person to help me, but I'm here and you're there, and I hate that. I hate Voldemort for killing my parents and taking them away. And I hate him because now he's weak and pathetic, and he loves me. Isn't it funny? The man who took my parents away loves me, Paul. He loves me. He's never loved before because his mind has been under attack this whole time. And now I feel like I shouldn't move forward with things because he loves me, and he loves me because I'm me, and before he hated me, but now he loves me, and I can't. Harry dropped to the carpet beneath him. He had been pacing while he shouted at Paul. He wasn't sure when that had started. He was also convinced that the tea had Veritasrum in it for him to tell all of that in one go. He was suddenly too tired to even care. Now that it was all out, and he had shared it with someone, he was tired. I don't want to do this anymore, Paul. Harry finally said in a whisper. Do what, Harry? Paul asked. Harry's eyes shifted to his therapist. Should he tell him? What would happen? Paul's face grew serious. Harry, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I would like an honest answer. Can you do that? He asked. I'll do my best. Harry sank back onto the carpet and studied the ceiling, waiting for Paul's questions. You seem very sad and upset to me, Harry. Can you tell me about it? Horrible, isn't it? I have all this money. And yeah, there's an evil dark lord out for my blood, and my aunt loves me now, and I have friends, and I don't want to be alive. I can't stop thinking, wouldn't everyone be better off without me? Harry responded. Are you feeling that things are hopeless? Paul asked. Harry glanced at him. The notebook and pen were back. Paul was making notes. That's a good way to put it. There just doesn't seem to be a point anymore. I mean, my depression came back. And yeah, I started feeling better with more sleep and regular food, and Cassius made sure I exercised. But once I started feeling better, then all these thoughts started to creep in. And, well, I guess they've always been there, but now I notice them. I don't want to die, Paul, but I also don't want to be alive, either. I can't stop thinking, wouldn't everyone be better off without me? Harry sighed and sat up. He pushed back his hair a few times, and then looked at Paul. How pathetic is that? Not pathetic at all, Harry. Not at all. Don't label yourself. Paul paused to write something down before he continued. What you're feeling is more common than you think. I bet there are people here at Hogwarts right now having some of the same thoughts. Paul leaned forward and rested a hand on Harry's shoulder, taking a moment to squeeze it. You are not alone, Harry. You are not the first to have these thoughts and feelings. There are people all over the world going through them, just like you are. Harry studied Paul's earnest face for a full minute before dropping his eyes and nodding. He took a deep breath. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Not if others were going through the same thing. Another question. Harry, you said that you don't want to be alive. Do you have a plan to kill yourself? No, not really. I mean, if the castle would collapse on top of me, or if Voldemort used the killing spell on me, I wouldn't be too upset, you know? Paul nodded and made another note. If circumstances were to change, if everything that is causing you some type of stress or anger were to suddenly change, would you still want to die? Paul asked. Harry thought for a moment. No. He said, there'd be no reason. If your circumstances changed and you find yourself still on this planet 5 years from now, can you see what that would look like? Paul asked, you mean if I were to still be alive and doing what I want? Harry wasn't sure what the point of that particular question was. Either he was going to be here, or he wasn't. That question made no sense. Yes, exactly. What would your life look like? Paul asked. I'd work on the West End and be an actor. Maybe not the main role, but a side role. Maybe I've been to drama school. That would be nice. I think I'd like that. Learning all about acting. Maybe I've had singing lessons at drama school. Paul's pen scratched in his notebook. What about family, Harry? What would that look like? Paul asked. I bet Aunt Petunia and Remus would be married. They really seem to like each other. Maybe Dudley is there, too. Sunday dinners would be nice. Holiday get-togethers. And your friends, Harry? Paul asked. What about your friends? What would you do? Hermione and I would definitely still be friends. We started a Star Wars club. Maybe she'd watch the movies with me. I still need to see the last one. And there are books. Did you know there are books? Yes, I did. I think that you'll like them when you read them. So you and Hermione would still be Star Wars fans and have your club. What else? I think she and I would hang out in London. There's a lot to do there, you know, museums and shows and stuff. Uh-huh. And Dracula. Oh, yeah. I'd visit him. He's nice. I like visiting him, so long as he doesn't take me shopping. Paul couldn't help smiling at the face Harry made at the idea of shopping. What else, Harry? Paul asked. Harry blinked and considered the question for a few minutes. That's already a lot, he finally said. I mean, that's a lot for me, Harry said. You're right. So, you can see a future for yourself. Do you know what that means? Paul asked. I have an excellent imagination. Harry asked. Paul snorted and shook his head. No, that's not what it means, but you do have a pretty good imagination. What it means is that somewhere in your mind, you have some hope for your future. Paul told him, you're not feeling completely hopeless. Cassius told me that it isn't the amount of time I have left on this earth, but how I make use of that time that really matters. That helped. I even wrote some stuff down. Harry paused, hesitant to share this with Paul, but knowing it was a good idea. Would you like to see it? I would love to, Paul responded. Harry held out his hand, and the notebook in which he had written down everything came into his hand. He handed it over to Paul, and Paul opened it. He blinked, and Harry smiled. Writing appeared on the page for Paul to read. I don't think I'm ever going to get used to magic, but it's still really cool, Paul told him. Some of it is, and some of it isn't, Harry told him. He looked around the room, and his eyes landed on the art supplies. Can I draw for a while? Harry asked. You never have to ask permission for such a thing, Harry. Knock yourself out, Paul told him. Harry went over to the art supplies and rummaged through them. There was a bunch of different media to choose from, and Harry allowed himself to go through it all, looking for what he wanted. Paul glanced over at Harry and saw that Harry was sprawled on the floor with art supplies surrounding him. Paul wanted a house elf. When he had arrived with Kala that morning, the little creature had popped into the room and had asked how it, Paul still wasn't sure what the elf's name or gender had been, could help Harry Potter's mind healer set up things for Harry Potter, sir. Aside from the elf's tendency to speak in the third person, it had been extremely helpful. No notes were taken, but everything Paul had thought they would need had been provided. Art supplies, comfortable furniture, distractions like pillows with different textures, candles with different scents, and even a thick rug that invited people to roll around on it. In other words, things in this room were as perfect as a magical creature could make it. Paul really wanted a house elf. Too bad they only lived with wizards. Perhaps he could exchange notes with one about what they considered necessary. Paul had thought his own office was welcoming, but this place seemed cozier. Maybe he should add a few things to his own office after having seen what the house elf did. Paul read through Harry's notebook a few times, pausing to make notes in his own notebook. He wrote down only ideas that could help Harry reach the goals he had recorded, and was happy to note down that Harry had filled out his ideas and wishes with a great deal of detail, far more detailed than what he had just told Paul. It made him feel a little relieved to see it in black and white. Harry was not hopeless, and Paul knew that Harry still had some idea that things may turn out differently than he expected. There was always hope, and Paul was glad to see it. He finished reading through Harry's materials for the third time, and then closed the notebook to set it aside. Paul paused to check on Harry, and the boy was still drawing. He seemed content at the moment, and was wiggling his foot in an absent-minded way, while his hand moved across the paper in front of him. Paul had to wonder what Harry was drawing, and hoped that Harry would share with him later. Paul flipped to a new page and made a quick list of things to cover with Harry. He would need to come back on a regular basis for a while. That wouldn't be a hardship for him at all, and it would ease his mind as well. He had been concerned about Harry since their last session. Collett had already offered his chauffeur service in case Paul needed to come back. Traveling with a vampire was certainly a fun experience. It was fast, and Paul had to admit to enjoying a private airplane for the first time in his life. He wasn't sure that a private airplane would be the way he traveled every time he needed to come and see Harry. Perhaps there was a train station that would get him close enough. He waited until Harry looked away from his drawing and motioned Harry back to him. "Would you like to share what you drew?" Paul asked. "Just a scene from Star Wars," Harry said, holding up the picture for Paul to see. Paul blinked at the image. There was Luke Skywalker staring out at the Tatooine suns. "There's no just about this, Harry. It's really well done," Paul told him. "Okay, Harry, let's go over a few things. You remember the triangle I taught you?" "Yeah. Thoughts, behaviors, and feelings, right?" Harry asked, settling down next to Paul. "Good memory." Paul drew the triangle with thoughts at one point, behaviors at the second, and feelings at the third. Thoughts influence behaviors. Behaviors influence feelings. Feelings influence behaviors. And behaviors influence thoughts. Back and forth it goes. He moved his pen along the lines, talking Harry through the triangle. "Let's break down some of what you told me, and then we're going to make a plan for you to follow, as well as a list of things for you to do when you're having suicidal thoughts. What do you think? Harry looked at the small list Paul had made, and then nodded. I'll give it a shot. All I ask is that you try, and let us know if you need help. You can be helped. I'm going to be coming back on a regular basis to check in with you and work with you, but you'll have to keep communicating with us. I know it can be hard, but are you able to do that? I think so, Harry agreed. He glanced up at Paul and then snorted at the face the man was making. He was waggling his eyebrows at Harry to see if Harry was really paying attention. I will continue to communicate as long as you promise that your eyebrows will stay on your face, because the idea of them flying off is truly disturbing. You can do that? Paul asked. Maybe? Never tried. And honestly, don't see the point of it, Harry admitted. Let's leave my eyebrows where they are, okay? Paul asked. Let's look at this, and we can discuss things, and see if we can't make things easier on you. First step, know that the feelings you are having are just feelings, and you don't have to act on them. Understand? Yes, I understand, Harry said. I promise, Paul. I understand. Good. So, second step. We fill out the plan. Paul pulled out a printed-out sheet of paper with different boxes on it. Each box had a title. The first one was Warning Signs, I Am in Crisis. Harry wasn't quite sure what to make of that. He filled in the box after talking with Paul about what that meant, and they went through the sheet pretty quickly. He had strategies listed to help him calm down, help him to distract himself from distressing thoughts and anxiety, and people he could talk to if he felt he was in danger. Cassius and Khaled were both listed, along with Paul, Hermione, and his aunt. Last resort was Madame Pomfrey, but Harry was hoping to keep unnecessary wizards and witches out of the situation. He just didn't trust them. They were desperate against Voldemort's looming shadow of violence, and he was worried that some of them wouldn't do the right thing in the face of that. Paul, Harry said softly, reading over his plan. What if this doesn't work? He asked. He wasn't sure what this was, but he had to ask the question. What's this, Harry? Paul asked, shifting to sit directly in front of Harry on the floor, face to face. He reached one hand out and rested it on Harry's hand, squeezing lightly. Harry shrugged. You must have some idea. Everything, Harry said in response, frustration plain in his voice. What if, despite this plan, I don't start feeling better? What if I spend what few days I have left just sad and angry? What if? He paused. He knew what he wanted to say, but saying it aloud made it real, and Harry really didn't want to believe that he would do it. Regardless that it would be a type of release, things would be over. Your pain doesn't end when you kill yourself, Harry, Paul said clearly and firmly. You may not be here to see it, but the pain will continue. Your family and friends will have your pain in addition to their own unanswered questions, and what-ifs will fill their immediate days, followed by days that are forever changed due to your absence, and then holidays without you there, and it will continue on for the rest of their lives. Your place in their lives, and your place in this world, will be left wanting. You will be so missed by a lot of people. What you're feeling is temporary, Harry. I can assure you of that. It is temporary. It won't last forever. These feelings will eventually end, and you'll start feeling better. Maybe not right away, and you may feel worse before you start feeling better. You may have setbacks and frustrations with this whole thing. If this plan we made doesn't do the job, there are other methods we can try. There is always another way, Harry. There is always another choice. I can honestly tell you that your aunt and Remus and your friends, and yes, I want to see you healthy, happy, and whole as a person. If that means you aren't a wizard anymore, or if you decide to become an accountant instead of an actor, or if you just really like collecting Star Wars memorabilia, then that's what will happen. What we don't want to see is you miserable and in pain. Keep talking with us. Harry, let us know what's happening in your life and in your emotions. We can help you, and you can be helped. Know this. Your death will leave a large hole in this world that no one else can fill, and I say that as a person who knew you before I knew you were a wizard. You are not alone. This is not hopeless. There is always another way. I promise you. Something broke, and Harry could feel his face grow hot. Paul leaned forward and gathered him in his arms. I've got you, Harry. You're not alone. There are many other things we can try if this plan doesn't work. It's just step one to find something that will work for you. This is the library, Harry told Paul, making the stone transparent in the passageway. Harry had offered a tour of Hogwarts for Paul, and Hogwarts herself was making it happen. She had opened her secret tunnels and passageways to allow the pair of them to wander around without being seen by others. There is a restricted section over there, and the books scream if you pick them up without a pass, Harry explained. Screaming books in a library? Paul asked. That seems illogical. Harry finished for him. It is, especially since the librarian insists on no noise whatsoever in the library. She has tossed me and my friends out of the library more than once for just talking. Harry motioned with his head for Paul to follow him. Next stop, the defense classroom. Harry led Paul down the passageway, and Paul couldn't help but look around at the decorations they passed. Harry, Paul said, stopping to point out a symbol on the wall. What's this? Paul asked. There was a circle with a lightning bolt in the middle, slightly gilt with gold. The Magus symbol, Harry answered, returning to Paul's side. It's old, but I'm not sure how old. I know very little about the relationship of the Magus to Hogwarts. He told Paul, Does everyone get to use these tunnels? Paul asked, curious. No, just me and my guests, Harry replied, motioning for Paul to follow him. How do you? I'm the Magus, Paul. Or so Hogwarts tells me. Harry reached out a hand and patted the bare stone, causing sparks of light and color to reverberate along the tunnel. I know very little about it, just what that means. Harry gestured towards the sign on the wall before shrugging and turning away. Paul followed after him, a little mystified by what he had just learned. Perhaps there was more going on than Harry would admit to right now, but he had a feeling that Harry would confide in him, given enough time. Chapter 76. Hi, Paul, Harry said as he entered what Paul was now calling the magical therapy room, only in his head, of course. He liked puns, but he didn't want to make Harry uncomfortable, if referring to a room as magic would make Harry uncomfortable. Working in a magical environment was sometimes difficult, and this was only his second visit. Hi, Harry, please have a seat. How are you feeling? Harry dropped into a squashy armchair and sighed. I'm tired, he said. No elaboration. It wasn't needed. Harry's head dropped back to rest against the back of the chair and relaxed into the cushions. You look tired. It's been 2 days since I last saw you. How are you doing? Paul asked as he looked Harry over. The boy did look a little tired, but there was something a little different. Is flat a feeling? Harry asked. Yes, if that's what you're feeling. Can you tell me more? Paul asked. Harry shrugged and picked up a cushion, tossing it up and down a little. Paul paused and looked Harry over again. He did seem flat, depressed. Any thoughts of suicide? Paul watched as Harry froze, and then gave a single nod. What did you do when you were feeling that way? Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a familiar piece of paper. I used my list. That is excellent, Harry. Can you give me a few more details? Well, this happened yesterday. I didn't feel like going to classes, and I wasn't really interested in food. I wanted stir-fry for some reason, and they were serving steak and kidney pie. So, wasn't hungry for what was on offer. I could have asked the house elves for something else, but that felt like too much effort. I was tired. Cassius was just lurking. I had a bunch of homework, and well, it was pointless. I mean, my charms teacher wanted a foot and a half about the differences between one charm and another, and I just didn't care. Harry paused and then shrugged. I started thinking about not having to deal with it, and then I started thinking about how nice it would be, pondered if I could, if you could kill yourself. He asked. Harry nodded, and then Paul asked when it seemed that Harry would not continue on his own. I remembered what you said about how these were just thoughts and I didn't have to act on them. I decided to leave dinner and pulled out the list we made last time. I read it over and realized that I was having those thoughts, and then looked at the next section, the distractions. Was that helpful? Harry nodded. Yeah, it was. I picked drawing, and Cassius retrieved my bag of art supplies for me, and he made it sound like he was just waiting for me to ask for something. I went outside to the Quidditch pitch and just drew for a while. Paul wrote down a note before responding to Harry. That's good, Harry. Did you want to share what you drew? Yeah. Harry pulled out a portfolio from his satchel and handed it to Paul. Harry had sketched the Quidditch pitch from his vantage point in the stands. This is well done, Harry. Your art is really coming along. I'm impressed. Anything else? Harry motioned for him to keep going, and the next picture surprised Paul. He studied it for a moment and considered it. This looks pretty frightening. Harry had drawn a small version of himself crushed into the corner of the page, surrounded by vague shapes and menacing scribbles advancing on him. The small version of him cringing away from everything surrounding him, his arms raised to ward off what was advancing on him. It's how I was feeling at the time, Harry whispered. I just felt like I was being crushed by everything. Crushed by what? Expectations? The future? Maybe people staring at me, being famous, having a lot of money, when I never had any before all of these expectations that came with my name. It seems like everyone is, expecting great things from me, and Harry fell quiet for a few minutes. I am being crushed by what feels like everything. I used to be able to handle it all, and now I can't. Do you think you should be able to handle it? Paul asked. Yes. Harry answered immediately and then shrugged. I don't know. You don't have to, Paul told him. Remember, if you just want to live the rest of your days doing underwater basket weaving, that's okay. Yeah. I think Aunt Petunia would have a few words to say about that. Remember, Harry, it's your life, and you're the one who's going to have to live it. Why not make it what you want, rather than what people expect? Remember, Harry, it's your life, and you're the one who's going to have to live it. Why not make it what you want, rather than what people expect? Paul's words stayed with Harry over the next few days. He said that he would be back on the third day, unless Khaled came and said that Harry needed him sooner. Paul had given Harry an assignment to do, and he was to do it before their next appointment. You can complete this by writing it out, or you can do it in art. Harry stared at the materials in front of him and wanted to toss everything across the room. Of course, Madame Pants may throw him out for disturbing her precious library, and so he refrained. No one thought to look for him here these days. You might find it difficult, but I would like you to try. Pick one thing to change in your life that you think would make the most difference. Show how this change would make things in your life better, and how things will change in relation to this choice. You can do more than one if you want, but I think that putting some ideas down on paper may help you put things into perspective. Remember, Harry, that there is no judgment here. You can make yourself and your future anything you want. Show me a version. Easier said than done, Paul. Harry muttered as he scribbled on paper with a pencil. I can't see myself 6 months from now, much less the bloody future. Harry tossed down his pencil and glared into space. This was hard. He did not like this. He lowered his head to rest on the table in front of him and decided to start scribbling to see what came of it. Maybe his brain would take over for him, and he wouldn't have to think about it. He allowed his mind to disengage, and he just drew for a while. He didn't draw anything in particular, but after he had filled his first page with meaningless squiggles and shapes, something started to develop on the second page. It all started with a box, and slowly, images started to appear in different shapes on the paper in front of him. There was an image of him at home with Aunt Petunia, just having tea and talking, playing video games with Dudley, a lightsaber fight with Hermione. He was pretty sure she was going to win. Playing Muggle chess with Remus. Him gardening in his own little spot. Just sitting in a chair and reading. Cooking with Aunt Petunia. He studied the images for a few minutes and felt a little realization settle in him. He took out his journal and started writing down what he had learned and his thoughts about it. There you are. Hermione dropped into the chair across from Harry, and her school satchel clattered down onto the table in front of him, breaking him out of his thoughts. Harry, you okay? Fine, he said absently, still focused on his writing. Do I need to get Cassius? Hermione asked, his brows coming together in worry. What? Harry's head snapped up and looked at her. No, please don't get Cassius. I was just a little focused on what I was doing. And, well, he gestured towards his journal, and Hermione's facial expression changed. Are you fully operational? She asked. Harry couldn't help smiling at that phrase. It had come from one of their Star Wars meetings. Harry couldn't actually call them meetings. More like a group of rabid schoolchildren coming together to chant lines that half of the school simply did not have the context to understand. Hermione had seen Harry having a moment, and she had asked him if he was fully operational. Since that time, it had become their code for his moments. If he answered in the negative, Hermione would help him get some space, a chance to breathe, or whatever he needed at that moment, even if it was alerting Cassius to the problem. It had only been 3 days since the first time, but Harry had to admit that it was helpful to be able to say something when he needed help without needing to say, "I need help." It was easier for him to say that he was not operational than it was for him to say, "I need to get some air," or "Get me out of here." Hermione was a great friend. He had felt comfortable enough to share his safety plan with her the day after he and Paul had created it. True, after she read it, she asked if she could hug him, and when he had said yes, she held on to him tightly for a full 10 minutes. She had cried, but then she gave a tiny sniffle, dried her tears, and hugged him again, telling him she was proud of him for admitting that he was not okay, and that he needed help. Harry thought it was a little strange that she was proud of him for it, but she wouldn't hear his protests and told him it was something to be proud of, and she respected him for it. "You're my best friend, Harry. I'm here for you, day or night. I love you, Harry," she told him. He was back in a hug before he recognized that she was going to do it again, and he relaxed against her with a laugh. "Love you too, me," he told her as he returned the hug. "Love you too." Harry didn't know what the future would bring to him, or even if he had won at this point. All he wanted at that moment was to sit with his friend and enjoy the hug. "I am fully operational," he told her, smiling at the phrase again. "Promise. I was just involved. Study time." He closed his journal and gathered up his art materials to tuck them away into his bag. "Yes, I think it is. Have you started on the essay from Professor Flitwick yet?" Hermione asked as she set out her materials. "Not really." Hermione's look told him to get started with it. Harry sighed and pulled out his charms materials. He could at least outline it. Maybe that would help him write it. The pair of them fell quiet as they turned to their assignments. This was nice, studying with a friend. He pulled out his journal and turned to the list he had made of things I enjoy. He had started it as a quick reference separate from his safety plan. It was one he could use without having to pull out his full safety plan. He jotted down "studying with a friend" and stashed the book away in his bag. He and Hermione studied for about an hour before Harry couldn't focus any longer and closed up his books for the day. "Finished?" Hermione asked, her head snapping up as Harry stood. "Can't focus. I'm going for a walk. Want me to come?" Hermione asked. "No, thanks. I'm fine," Harry said. Hermione nodded her head and turned back to her homework. Harry could tell she was in her accomplish something mode, and nothing would deter her from it for a little while. Harry started down the stairs, and Hogwarts helpfully made the stairs stay still, so he wouldn't have to wait for them to finish moving around. Hogwarts was extremely helpful in that. He wandered outside and ended up at the lake. He shrugged philosophically and sat down on a large rock at the end of the lake. When it was warmer, he would dangle his feet in the water from this rock. Now, though warming, charms were necessary. Harry pulled out his drawing materials and started sketching the lake in front of him. He added an AT-AT from Star Wars just for fun and found himself imagining what would happen if some of the pure-blood students ever saw an AT-AT in real life. "Hello, Potter." Drake's voice broke him out of his thoughts. "Hi, Drake." Drake didn't say anything further. He just sat down at the other end of the rock and was quiet. Harry went back to his drawing, ignoring the other boy. He knew that Drake would speak when he was ready. "Are you okay?" Drake asked, startling Harry out of his imagined scene. Darth Vader was attacking the Whomping Willow with his lightsaber, and the willow was winning from what Harry could tell. Fine. Sure, and I'm a muggle, Drake said in response. I'm not asking you to confide in me or anything, Harry. I just wanted to let you know that you have people on your side even if you're holding blackmail material on me. Snape already knows about your muggle girlfriend. He figured it out. I didn't tell him. Harry responded, Oh, I know. We've had numerous talks about not disgracing myself, family planning, the fact that my teenage hormones are pushing me to make unwise decisions that I would otherwise not make if I didn't have them coursing through my system. Drake cackled at the look Harry was giving him. Oh, if you could see your face. I really don't understand the conversations you two have. I really don't. Oh, come on. You're telling me that you've never had the wand and holster talk, birds and the bees, watering the flowers, tending the garden. Harry bust out laughing and let his sketchpad fall to the ground. Drake laughed too, and Harry had a feeling that Drake had wanted to make him laugh. Okay, never want to hear that kind of talk again. I'll stick with the Muggle version. Thanks. They use actual terms. You had that talk before coming to Hogwarts. Drake sounded surprised. No, I was just really good at finding information that I thought I needed to know. There was a really helpful librarian that showed me how to find what I was looking for in the library. Of course, once she figured out what I was researching, there was a really serious talk about how some things are best left to the adults in your life. Harry shrugged. Now, I really don't want to ask my aunt about how things work. So Remus is the choice. And since I'm pretty sure that he and my aunt are somewhat involved, I don't want to ask him any questions either. Well, there's always Professor Snape. Drake said lightly, Ugh. Harry shuddered and gave Drake a dirty look. He gave the fourth year. Your body is changing and you're not allowed to disgrace Slytherin talk in the dormitory. It was very informative. He had dash. Drake's voice cut off because Harry had silently conjured a pillow and tossed it at his face. Drake caught the pillow, smirked, and then tucked it behind his head, relaxing back against the grass. Thank you, Potter. Very thoughtful. Would you like a blanket, too? No, thanks. If I get too comfortable, I won't go to my next class. He paused, and then propped himself up on one elbow to look at Harry. Seriously, though, you okay? A little off, but I'm functioning, I guess. Harry said, honestly, just tired, I suppose. If you need to hide, or anything, I have a private bedroom. You can hide out there. Cassius isn't allowed in Professor Snape's quarters, so you'd be safe from your, honestly, Potter, I'm still not sure what to call him. Bodyguard, valet, pest. Harry started listing. No appreciation for what I put up with, Cassius said, startling the pair of them. And I will not have you hiding away where I cannot reach. There is a reason I am here, Master Harry. Whatever happened to, you won't notice me half the time. Cassius gave an injured sniff. I cannot help the fact that you are extremely observant when you want to be. And what have I told you about sitting on the ground? Cassius said, lifting Harry to his feet. Besides, you have a visitor. Visitor? Harry asked as Cassius straightened his uniform. Yes, your father is here. No time to change, but I've done what I can. Cassius started urging him back towards the castle. He shot a frantic look to Drake, but the boy gave him a shrug. It was obviously too late for help from Drake. Come along, Master Malfoy. Lord Teeps would like to meet you. Draco followed after them, his face pale with the idea that he was going to meet the Lord Teeps. Harry followed Cassius into the castle, and towards a classroom Harry knew hadn't been used in his time at Hogwarts. Inside was Headmistress McGonagall, Lord Teeps, and a man Harry vaguely recognized as the tailor from the summer before. "Mr. Potter, I would appreciate knowing of the arrival of your guests ahead of time," the professor said as she approached him. "I'm sorry, Professor. I was not aware that he was arriving." "Ah, Harry." Dracula interrupted the professor. "Thank you, Professor, for helping me to surprise my son." Dracula stepped forward and held Harry by the shoulders, looking him over. He stepped forward and pressed a kiss to Harry's forehead. "Good to see you, Harry." He held Harry in a hug, and Harry relaxed against him. "And this must be your little friend, Drake," he said as he stepped around Harry to approach Draco Malfoy, who turned even paler if that was possible. Draco bowed, a very formal bow, almost exactly the same he had given Harry when he found out about Harry's connection to Dracula, and then offered his hand. Dracula took Draco's hand in his own, shook it, and then wrapped both hands around it as though he was a maiden aunt attempting to hold on to him. He stepped closer, and then draped an arm around Draco's shoulders. "Thank you for keeping my son company this afternoon. His friends are always a delight to meet. Forgive the interruption, but son?" McGonagall sounded absolutely perplexed. Dracula turned back towards McGonagall, pausing in what was a very subtle move to the door with Drake. "Yes, Harry came to visit me this past summer, and well, he is now my son. Didn't you tell her?" I just wanted to be normal." Harry was not sure what Vlad's expression meant, but he was concerned that Vlad might retaliate. As normal as possible, considering." He edged away. Vlad's look was telling him that Harry was in trouble. "We'll discuss this later. Harry, you should allow your tailor to measure you while I see your friend off to his next class. Then I shall speak with your headmistress." Dracula stepped away from Draco, nudged Harry towards the tailor, and Harry found himself relieved of his school robe, jumper, tie, and button-up shirt. The classroom door opened and shut behind Draco, and then Dracula stepped back towards McGonagall. Harry was left standing in his undershirt, a new addition from Cassius, which he had to admit he liked, and his trousers. He was standing on a stool, and the tailor started measuring him, muttering under his breath in a language Harry couldn't understand. The man nudged him a few times, asking Harry to hold out his arms, to shift his legs apart to allow the tape measure to wrap about his thigh, and other things. The fact that Harry was unable to understand the directions didn't seem to matter. The tailor made himself understood through pokes, pinches, and at one point, a light smack on the arm that brought Harry's attention back to what they were doing from watching Professor McGonagall and Dracula speak to each other behind a silencing spell. Harry could break the spell and listen in if he wanted, but then the tailor started holding up swatches of cloth to Harry's face and demanding that Harry participate, even though he could not answer any questions. "Yes, that one." Dracula's voice called out from where he was standing. He was pointing at the swatch of cloth that the tailor was holding. He said something in the language Harry didn't understand, and Harry had a feeling he was just repeating himself for the tailor. He said something else, and the tailor nodded before turning back to Harry and gestured for Harry to do something. Harry could only shrug in bewilderment, and the tailor gave a disappointed sigh. "Raise your arms, Master Harry." He wants to measure your waist. Cassius said, "Thank you, Cassius." Harry did as requested and nearly jumped off the stool when the tape measure was shifted across his bottom. The tailor chided him for moving and then went back to his measuring. I really don't want to know why his tape measure went there. Harry grumbled, "I have an idea, but I'm not allowed to share." Cassius told him, "You're done now." Harry stepped down from the stool and started to reach out for his uniform, but Cassius stopped him. "Step over here, Master Harry." Cassius pulled him to the opposite side of the room, behind a screen. Harry had a sinking feeling that more clothing was going to become an issue, but all that waited for him was another stool and Dr. Smithson. "No offense, Doctor, but really?" "Yes, really. Cooperate." Cassius sat him down on the stool and stood over him as the doctor smiled down at his patient. "Good to see you, my lord, though I wish it was under better circumstances. I'll make the exam quick, okay?" Dr. Smithson was a nice doctor, and Harry appreciated how fast the exam was. The standard questions, the usual pleasantries about the weather in London, how fascinating magical travel with a vampire could be, and did my lord notice that he was underweight? Not really interested in food at the moment. Harry said, "It comes and goes." Harry sighed, "I'm trying." "I know you are. Just try to remember that you need the calories. Your body is changing rapidly at the moment, and it needs all the calories and rest it can get, especially if you aren't up to eating full meals. Cassius, let's try some high-calorie snacks between his classes and during his free time. See if that doesn't help. I can also prescribe some sleeping pills to help you sleep, if you'd like. I can tell you aren't sleeping well." "No, I'm okay without them. There's this tea that Cassius gets for me that helps on the bad nights, and I like it. I fall asleep pretty fast after drinking it." Smithson paused and then looked up at Cassius for confirmation. Cassius nodded in agreement and then smiled down at Harry. "Master Harry is slowly eating more and drinking the tea I give him." "Very well. More food, more rest, and more relaxation. You are exhibiting signs of stress that I normally see in high-level politicians and, well, people with extremely dangerous professions that I cannot name or give details about because doing that would break the law. I'll be back to see you in a week, and if I don't see some slight improvement, we may have to remove you from school for a while." But the doctor folded his arms and gave him a look. Harry was very familiar with this look. His aunt had it, Remus had it, and even Cassius had it from time to time. It was the "you aren't taking care of yourself, and you need to take care of yourself" look. Harry sighed. "Understood. Thank you." Harry sighed, and then allowed Cassius to pull him back to his feet. "I'll do my best. That's all I ask." The doctor wished him a good day, gave him a handwritten list of instructions, and then started to pack away his bag. "Let's put your uniform back to rights," Cassius said as he led Harry out from behind the screen. Dracula was studying him as Harry appeared, and Harry had to look away as Dr. Smithson approached Dracula and started to speak to him in a low voice. Harry tied his tie and pulled on his jumper, ignoring the low voices on the other side of the room. Cassius held out his robes from him, and Harry realized that he had gotten used to someone helping him get dressed. Cassius smoothed his shoulders down and reached around to fasten the robe around him. "A comb and mirror, Master Harry," Cassius said, handing him the items. Harry focused on smoothing his hair and tying it back away from his face. He noticed Dracula's insignia hanging from his necklace, and he tucked it away. Cassius reached up and pulled it out, allowing Harry to see him do it. He wants to see it. You can tuck it away later. He whispered to Harry. Harry nodded in response and prepared himself to meet his father. Vlad stepped forward as McGonagall left the room. Harry supposed that he was spared from McGonagall's wrath for the moment. He had a feeling that there would be a meeting between the two of them later. Harry found himself crushed against Dracula's chest and just held there. Shush, child, and let me hold you. Dracula whispered to him. A vampire's strength was not exaggerated. Vlad could pick him up as though he weighed nothing and carried him to the window seat on the other side of the room. They settled there, and Vlad just held on to him. Harry relaxed into the hold, and the scent he had come to associate with Dracula was there. Slightly musty, but in a good way, like the garden shed. Dracula always smelled a little like earth under whatever fragrance he was favoring that day, and Harry found it made him feel a little at home. Oh, Harry, my son, why did you not tell me that you were having such a difficult time at school? Don't know. I didn't tell anyone. Harry offered. Everything was supposed to be all right, except it wasn't, and I wanted it to be, but then I got here, and everything just wasn't all right, and there was the schoolwork and that ridiculous boy who lived issue, and these little kids following me around like I'm supposed to save them all, and I can't and dash, Harry choked on air, and realized that he was crying. Shoo. Dracula cradled the back of his head and pulled him in closer. I know. Let it out, child. Vlad held him there longer than Harry had thought was possible. They were alone in the room, and Harry a feeling that Cassius had directed the tailor and doctor to remove themselves. I'm here, my child. I'm here. Thank you, Harry said softly. Vlad's arms tightened a bit more, and then released him. Harry pulled back, and Vlad offered him a handkerchief. Harry accepted it with a nod of thanks, and then cleaned his face. I'll have to make sure Cassius provides some of those for you. Every gentleman should own at least 3. I already have some, Harry told him, folding it and offering it back to the vampire. Vlad took it and reached up to Harry's face, wiping a spot Harry was sure he hadn't missed in his own efforts. Well, you need to carry them so you can use them. Vlad told him. Now, do you know why I am here? No, I don't. Not that I don't enjoy the surprise of you showing up, but why are you here? Well, there was something about a masquerade, and you and your friends needing some costumes. Really? You brought costumes? Yes, really, I'm joining you at the masquerade, and I can't wait to see everyone's faces when you walk in. Oh, I'm also told that you're going to be in the talent show. That should be a treat for everyone. And then the dance later that evening. Oh, I can't wait. The headmistress has invited me to stay until the day after the masquerade, and classes that day are completely canceled. We are going to have such fun. Vlad said, ruffling Harry's hair. Fun? Oh. Harry had a feeling what Vlad thought was going to be fun. He had to warn some people. Professor Snape would probably appreciate a warning. Yes, now, it is time for you to show me around. Come, Harry, show me the wonders of Hogwarts. Chapter 77. He had had a good few days since Vlad had shown up. He wasn't sure if it was something that Vlad was doing. He suspected it but couldn't prove it, or if things had just managed to end up the way they were. He had been sleeping, and his eating was okay. He suspected Cassius had had a word with the house elves, because stir-fry was suddenly available with tofu and prawns. It was not a combination he would have tried had he been cooking, but he liked it. It just showed that the house elves knew his own tastes better than he knew them himself. His schedule had become highly regimented with time blocked off for everything from studying to relaxing. It helped, though he wasn't sure how it worked. The talent show had been good, too. He was glad that Hermione had insisted that he take part. She had said that part of the talent was spell work. Nearly everyone had used spells to enhance their talents, and so his soliloquy from his first play came back, and he loved every moment of it. The great hall transformed for the night. The tables disappeared, and benches were lined up to face the front where a stage had appeared. Being backstage had felt like home, even if it was only a curtained-off area out of sight of the audience. He had decided on just a simple muggle suit as a costume. He had no makeup with him, but some makeup charms had helped highlight his features for the lights on stage. His name and act was announced, of course. They had only said a speech, and he wanted to know who thought that was a good idea. Surely even wizards knew of Shakespeare. He had paused, and then walked on stage, pensive and deliberate. Thou, nature, art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound. He played it differently than his first time. This time, he was resigned rather than enthusiastic, sad and contemplative. It still worked. There had been a pause after he finished, as though people were waiting to see if he had really finished, likely if wizards didn't know Shakespeare. The applause was good, but he did not win, and that was okay. Neville had taught plants to sing on cue, which Harry thought took a lot more talent than giving a soliloquy, especially when the small plant had the lowest voice out of the whole bush. Harry could see the spell work that went into it, and it was extremely complex. Neville deserved the award more than any other act that evening, in Harry's humble opinion. Neville's ability to weave spell work and plant life together would bring him some form of apprenticeship. Harry could already tell that the professors were surprised with what Neville had accomplished, and if Harry was reading things right, Neville would have a few offers before the term was out. "Well done, Nevada," Harry said, shaking his hand in congratulations. "I didn't think I would actually win." Neville looked shocked and slightly bewildered. "I didn't think I would actually win." He repeated, "Have more faith in yourself, Neville. I knew your project would astound people. The professors are still talking about it," Hermione said as she hugged Neville. "Go on now. Your adoring public is waiting." "What do you think, me? Do you think Neville's plants are going to become the next big thing?" Harry asked her in a soft voice. "If they aren't, then I will know that the magical world truly has no soul." Hermione gave a snort at the end, and Harry smothered his laughter behind his hand. "By the way, Harry, I like the changes you made to the soliloquy." "I didn't change anything." "Fine, you acted it differently, though I'm not sure that's the correct term." "So long as there is no corpsing on my part." Harry shrugged and wrapped an arm around Hermione's shoulders. "Let's get some of those refreshments." He suggested, "Lead on, Macduff." "Wrong play, Hermione." Harry told her. "You think I don't know that?" Hermione said with a firm, ironic tone in her voice. "Ah, right. Forgot you were named after a Shakespeare character for about 10 seconds." Harry made the best puppy dog eyes he could. "Forgive me?" "Only if we get some refreshments right now." Harry laughed and guided Hermione towards the refreshments. The house elves had managed to throw together an impressive amount of sweets and snacks. Harry held Hermione's plate while she poured herself a drink. And then Harry took his own snack over to where Vlad was standing. "Hello, son. You did very well," Vlad said as Harry stepped up to him. Vlad, as usual, pulled Harry against his side and squeezed his shoulders. Harry accepted the embrace and leaned against him. "Did you have fun?" "Yeah, I did. I really liked revisiting my first soliloquy." "Have you thought about drama school?" Vlad asked. Harry blinked and looked at Vlad. "Where did that come from?" he asked. The thought almost physically hurt. "I think we should look at some drama schools for you after Hogwarts." "Oh, I know you're a wizard, but your magic will keep, for you have a true talent for the stage." Vlad squeezed his shoulder again, and Harry sighed. "There are some fantastic schools in London. Or you could go abroad if you prefer. Germany is full of opportunities, or France, even Japan has musical theater studies. America, too, if you would prefer that. They have so many schools and programs, it could make your head spin." Harry paused. "Vlad, I don't know." "Think about it, son. I think you have talent, and it would be a shame to waste that talent hidden away with the magical population." He released Harry's shoulders and melted into the crowd. Harry blinked after him and could not help the little shudder that passed through his body. Think about school in London? Of course it would be London. He wanted to join a West End musical, or as close as he could get. Don't think about it. He told himself, not going to happen. You really should think about it, little brother. Khalid said as he appeared beside him. Khalid, when did you get here? Harry asked, thrilled to see him. I came just this morning at the invitation of our father. It was wonderful to see you act again. It was just a soliloquy. I'd hardly call it acting. It was a good soliloquy, no matter what you think. He ruffled Harry's hair. I'm off to talk to the boy with the plants. Quite an impressive feat. His name is Neville. Yes, I know. He's in your year. Khalid stepped away, and Harry had to take a few minutes to get his emotions under control. Just thinking about the future, and especially that kind of future, acting in a play or in a musical, well, it hurt to think about. It physically hurt to think about it. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, working through one of the breathing exercises that Paul had taught him. After a few minutes, he felt calmer, and his chest hurt less. One day at a time. Harry. The crowd in the great hall held a few people Harry thought he recognized from his summer visit to Castel Teeps. The question his brain asked, and he refused to answer on his own, was why they were here. Some of them seemed very familiar with the professors, and Harry thought that some of them were likely academics in addition to whatever they were in their own countries. Harry couldn't help but feel as though there was a conspiracy. What kind of conspiracy, he was not sure, but a conspiracy of some sort was happening. There were plans. He could almost see them being built before him as he watched Khalid and Vlad move through the crowd. Vlad was getting plenty of sharp bows and curtsies as he greeted and talked with the students and staff. Everyone at Hogwarts seemed to be enjoying the visiting nobility. Wait, was Vlad considered royal or noble? Harry wasn't sure what his father's exact status was in relation to the wider world. He would have to ask for more detail. Surely, as the man's son, that would be something he would be expected to know. Would he be recognized by the Queen? For instance, Harry's own mind skittered away from that thought, hesitant to question such a thing. He did not want to know if the queen knew about an immortal individual in her kingdom. That was too much for his brain to consider today. He would ask Cassius tomorrow if the queen knew about his father. That should tell him everything he needed to know. Harry left the party a little early, feeling as though the crowd was pressing on him a bit. Staying in crowds was one of the things that was affecting his mood, and he didn't want to push himself too much, considering there was the masquerade that evening. He wanted to have enough energy for that, though he did plan to sleep like the dead after the masquerade. Vlad had really come through with the costumes. Hermione had let out the most girlish squeal he had ever heard from her, hugged Vlad, and then disappeared with her box, so quickly Harry thought it may have been disapparition. Vlad looked a little bemused, but had shrugged it off. "What?" he said in response to Harry's look. "If a young lady wishes to hug me so enthusiastically, then I have no reason to deny her. Cassius keeps lecturing me on proper behavior with the opposite sex," Harry mentioned as he turned towards his own costume. "Yes, he's told me. He plays by old rules. Older than yours, different from mine. I find women one of the most mysterious creatures I have ever turned the tides of history and contributed far more to society than man has given them credit for. I adore them for their ways and stand in awe of their complexities. Never doubt their abilities, my son, for they can destroy and restore your life and well-being with mere glances. Vlad, are you a romantic?" Harry couldn't help but ask the question. "Oh, you have no idea, son." Vlad squeezed his shoulder and shook it. "A little young yet for those stories," he said with a wink. "Now then, that costume, will it do? I did bring a few backups, if this is not the one you want." "This is perfect, Vlad." "Thank you." Harry rested his hand on the box. Cassius had already taken Victor's off to him at Hermione's request, and all Harry had to do now was to freshen up and get dressed for the evening. Harry tucked the box under his arm. "What are you wearing?" he asked Vlad. "Ah, well, just my formal attire shall suit the evening, I believe. I have a domino mask. I'd prefer to be mostly known this evening, as opposed to unknown. It makes misunderstandings less common, especially when I am already known to the host. Had I been anonymous, I think I would have been the rat catcher." Harry laughed as Vlad chuckled along. "Not Piangi? Oh, heavens no. I'm not big enough to fill out that costume. Piangi is a man of massive size, and well, I am not." Harry paused at the mirror and studied his costume. He was not sure where Vlad had found it. The lack of labels, except one small one that Harry could not read, told him it was likely made just for this event. He wondered if Hermione knew. The first layer was simple. An undershirt and his regular pants would do, and over that, red tights. He pulled on the trousers, which gathered at the knee and buttoned closed. He did them up. Why was the connection in the back? And he closed the clasp. Braces were attached, and he adjusted them slightly to ensure that he was comfortable with them. His shoes came next. They were the same shade of red as the rest of his costume, with gold decorations that ran along the edge and gathered together in an 8-pointed star above the toe. They had a slight heel, but then again, this costume was supposed to have shoes with a heel. Harry stepped into them and reminded himself to walk extremely upright. Harry opened the one container of makeup he thought necessary for this costume and darkened around his eyes. He powdered the makeup so that it would dry, and he paused to study himself in the mirror. Further makeup was not necessary at this point. The rest of his face would be hidden by the mask. Harry thought the mask was brilliant. He couldn't wait to see everyone's reaction to it. If they didn't stun him when he entered the Great Hall. He pulled out the hair gel he had asked for, and it did not matter what anyone said. Hair gel was an amazing product, and he refused to replace it with anything magic had made. This hair gel had served him well while playing Edmund and Dracula, and through so many meetings that threatened his sanity. He wet his hair and slicked it back, combing gel into it. He felt a little strange as he prepared to go to the masquerade. He felt like he was about to go on stage without having learned his lines. He pulled on his jacket, also red with gold trim along the end of the sleeves, and down across his front in a pattern that reminded him of something from Shakespeare's time. The sleeves were puffed at the shoulders and then slimmed down against his arms towards his wrists. He did up the buttons one by one, taking deep breaths as he went. He moved his shoulders and felt that the seams were perfect. Yes, definitely made for him. Cassius came in just then and stopped. "Ah, that's the one," he said softly. "Do you think it will do?" Harry asked. "Oh, no doubt." He answered. "No doubt at all." Harry smirked. Musical based on a novel. He muttered, "I remember the book rather fondly, and the time period of the piece itself. Memories. Now, how can I help?" "Just, support the mask while I put it on." Harry asked. There were a series of straps that would hold the mask into place, but it was awkward to hold it and buckle the straps at the same time. Cassius held it in place for him, while Harry reached back and buckled the mask onto his face. "How does it feel?" Cassius asked. "Really light." Harry answered. The mask moved with his words, and Cassius's eyes grew wide. "What?" "An extremely effective mask, Master Harry." Cassius told him. "Very disturbing." "I love it," Harry admitted. "Hat, cloak, and gloves." Harry said, "Finally, the masquerade has already started." "Fashionably late is not exactly fashionable, Master Harry," Cassius told him as he helped Harry into the cape. "I know, but I doubt anyone has noticed my absence with the number of people here tonight." He fastened the clasp around his neck and adjusted the high collar around his mask. "Cassius, can you see what it's caught on?" Harry saw Cassius's hands move around, and he found he could move his mask again. Perfect. Harry picked up his hat and faced the mirror to place it on his head. White gloves completed the look, and he again counted his lucky stars that Vlad had managed to do this for him. "Ready?" Cassius asked him. "Ready." Harry paused at the top of the staircase, neatly hidden in the shadows. The party had spilled out of the great hall and into the hallways. Hogwarts students of all ages were running about, dressed in their costumed best. Most of them Harry did not recognize, but a few looked like various book characters from wizarding novels. A few people were playing muggles with various stages and decades of fashion mixed together. Harry thought that the world needed better education about muggles. No wonder magical people were so obvious when out in Muggle London. Harry pulled back as Draco Malfoy passed him, and he had to wonder if Julie had sent him his costume. He was dressed as Jareth the Goblin King from a movie called Labyrinth. Julie had to have picked this costume out. Those trousers were barely decent, but at least Harry wasn't the only one in heels. He was almost jealous of the sequins, if he had to be honest with himself. Draco made an excellent Jareth, and he had gone all out for it, too. He was even wearing makeup. I need to write to Julie and ask if she came up with this idea. Harry took a few deep breaths again. This was just a party, and yes, it was a lot of people, but no one knew who he was tonight. The full-face mask hid his identity. Masquerade. Hide your face so the world can never find you. Harry stepped up to the top of the stairs, and just as he reached the top, the music ended completely and did not start up again. All eyes were on him. If I find out vampires were involved, I will drop 1,000,000 chia seeds in front of them. Hell with it. Harry stepped down each step, one at a time, making it as menacing as it could be. Step, step, step. He finally reached the bottom and saw Hermione standing there, dressed as Christine Day in her masquerade outfit. Victor was next to her, dressed as Raoul. He held out his hand towards her as the music started, and she took it, giving Victor a smile and a wink as Harry started to dance with her. The crowd around them started to pair off and dancing again, relaxing as Harry moved towards the center of the great hall. Harry, you look incredible. I'm not Harry this evening, he said softly. Oh, you're not, are you? Her tone was teasing. Certainly not. I am someone with much more class than Harry Potter would ever have, an accomplished musician, engineer, artist. Need I go on? Okay, playing a part was fun. Harry would have to admit it. Can I ask you to sing for me, my angel? Hermione just threw her head back and laughed. Harry spun her around and around again until the slow song ended, and he handed her back off to Victor when the next fast song started. Harry melted into the crowd around him and joined the person he had really come to see. Hello, Tom, Harry said, settling against the wall next to the apparition of his double. He let Tom have the phantom costume. Hi, Harry. Interesting night. So far, nice costume. I can't claim responsibility for it. Vlad provided them all. Harry turned his head and looked back out at the crowd. He couldn't help but feel as though something was going to happen this evening. Harry watched as Tom pushed off the wall and walked into the crowd, offering to dance. Strangely, many people shied away from Tom once they saw the mask. Same for Harry, he realized as he walked among the students and staff. I look like a Death Eater in their minds. Harry wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. And who are you? Harry turned and found Professor Snape standing there, dressed in a Victorian suit. The man was wearing a small silver crucifix around his neck. Harry had to think hard for a moment, for that small clue, especially since Snape had never mentioned a religion of any kind ever, gave Harry a vague idea of Snape's choice of costume for the evening. Hello, Professor. I'm the Mask of the Red Death, Phantom of the Opera. Do I have the honor of addressing Dr. Van Helsing? Well spotted. Does that crucifix work? Harry couldn't help asking. Well, no vampires have made for my neck this evening, so I'm going to say that it's doing its job. You know that it's not real, right? Don't shatter my illusions, Potter. Allow me to enjoy this night of peace. Yes, sir. Cassius is probably behaving himself because Vlad is here. Some warning that we are having visiting royalty would have been nice. Snape groused. Honestly, I don't know what the headmistress was thinking, having him visit, and not telling anyone who he really is. Those who know, know, and those who don't, well, are having a good time. Harry said, watching as Vlad danced with a young first year. He was teaching her to dance, as her toes were resting on Vlad's toes, and Vlad was steering her around in a little circle. He should have had a lot of children. He's a good father. Is he, Potter? Snape asked, suddenly serious. He's good to you? Yes, sir. He's very good to me, and to my family as well. I don't know about Uncle Vernon, and I hope the pair never meet, but he keeps a close eye on me. He knows about my history with my aunt and cousin. He even gets along with Remus. That's good. I know your mother would have wanted you cared for. Happy, Snape said as he edged closer to Harry. I am very well cared for now. Professor, I hope my mother's spirit is at peace. Harry said softly, I pray it is as well. Snape paused. Excuse me, Potter. I must go stop some enthusiastic snogging in the corner. Harry laughed as Snape moved away. He had sounded way too enthusiastic, but Harry supposed that teachers had to find their fun where they could. Breaking up a snogging couple likely provided a bit of entertainment in their dreary days. Harry ended up dancing for most of the masquerade, stopping only for refreshments a time or two or reconnoiter, with his doppelganger in the Phantom of the Opera costume. He even made his way back to Hermione and stole her from Victor for a dance. Having a good time? She asked as he led her to the center of the dance floor. I am, actually, which I thought was impossible with this many people. Having the mask and playing a character really helps. Harry said as they started to dance. I'm glad. I've noticed another phantom here this evening. I wonder who he is. Hermione said, nodding to the phantom currently standing on the side, chatting with a little first year. Yeah, we ran into each other. Said his name was Tom. Harry told her. He could see her thinking very hard about something. Harry dash. Hermione's voice cut off as the music suddenly stopped and the room darkened. Harry stopped dancing as the great hall ceiling darkened and the floating candles went out. Hogwarts herself shuddered, and Harry felt something catch deep inside, not entirely sure what was happening. He looked up as the darkened hall tinged to green. The dark mark filled the ceiling space above them, the empty eye sockets glaring down at the people. The walls around them and the floor under their feet shuddered again, and there was a ghastly sound that echoed down the halls and stairways of Hogwarts. The wards have been breached. Harry heard McGonagall say from her position, all students into the Great Hall immediately. Any student that had been outside the Great Hall now rushed in, their fear evident on their faces. What did McGonagall mean wards have been breached? A second year said from beside him. Harry looked down at him. It means that something has broken the magic protecting the castle, but don't worry, Harry said, leaning down to rest a hand on the boy's shoulder. You're still safe in the castle. He ruffled the boy's hair and gave him the strongest smile he could muster. Harry, Hermione stepped closer. Oh, don't worry, everything is going to be fine. The teachers will protect us, Hermione said as she saw the frightened 12-year-old. Harry paused as he thought about this young boy facing a basilisk as Harry had done when he was only 12. Never again. No child would suffer at Hogwarts again, like Harry had suffered. Harry closed his eyes and reached out to feel the protections surrounding the hall and the castle. Hogwarts herself responded, and the dangers that Harry had survived embedded themselves in the hallways hidden away for the Magus. Harry's story of his 7 years of Hogwarts were now carved in stone, and Harry knew that the next Magus, whoever they may be, could learn from what Harry had done. Harry moved away from the younger student and stopped when Hermione grabbed his hand. Harry squeezed Hermione's hand as she turned him to look at her. "No, Harry," she said softly. "I can tell what you're thinking, and dash. I have to, Hermione. No matter what, remember this. You are my friend, and I love you." He leaned forward and gave her a brotherly peck on the forehead before escorting her back to Victor. "Victor, keep her with you." Harry told Victor. "Oh, no you don't, Harry Potter," Hermione said, coming after him as he moved towards the doors. Victor stumbled behind her and tried to convince her to stay in the hall where it was safe. Tom appeared at Harry's side, and Harry held out a hand to his construct. It was almost like having a brother when Tom was around, but it was time for Tom to go away now. Harry felt his missing part resettle in his body as those close to him let out gasps. "And where do you think you are going, Potter?" Snape said in his ear, one hand clamped on his shoulder. "Nowhere, Professor," Harry said as he stepped away from the man. Hogwarts herself was helping him now, keeping the potions master and everyone around him in their place as he moved through the crowd. Their hands could not hold him, and they could not move to stop him. The great hall's outer wall shivered, and then the bricks and stones started to peel away from themselves to create an archway for him, complete with the magus symbol at the apex. Did you have to tell everyone? He couldn't help but think as Hogwarts gave him her usual farewell. The magic settled deep inside him and warmed him. It felt similar to how he felt when Aunt Petunia made him tea when he wasn't feeling well, or when she smoothed his hair back. Loved. He felt loved. As he stepped through the archway and down the steps that Hogwarts had made for him, his elaborate costume shifted to his robes and mask, and behind him, he heard students start to speak as the archway shut behind him. They had all recognized the costume change and thought that they knew what it meant. Harry gathered up some magic and created strong wards around the castle itself. No one would be able to leave while he willed it, and he knew they would have to wait long. The Dark Lord and his Death Eaters waited for him in a half-circle. The dark mark was floating in the sky above them, tinging everything the same sickly green. Voldemort did not look powerful or even fearsome. He looked old and tired, but triumphant. Finally, I have returned to Hogwarts. The moment has come, my followers. Tonight, we end this conflict with my child. Oh, my child. Harry had walked steadily forward towards the Death Eaters as Voldemort was speaking. Harry saw Robinson standing at the edge of the crowd and gave him a small nod of hello, which the man returned. My child. Voldemort stepped forward and wrapped Harry in a hug, squeezing him tight. Oh, my child. Straight from Hogwarts, and didn't even need to be called. Very good, child. Very good. He paused for a moment, and then his eyes shifted to the castle behind them. I think everyone should see this, don't you? He told Harry. Harry turned as Voldemort raised his wand towards the school. The great hall's wall turned transparent, and Harry could see the people inside staring back at them. I have a gift for you, my child. Voldemort told him as Harry watched Hermione cast spells at the doors of the Great Hall with that ridiculous squad of students that thought they were Harry's protectors helping her as best they could. Harry couldn't help but want to laugh. The teachers were motionless, but the students were attempting to reach him. And then he saw Vlad, Cassius, and Khalid moving towards the doors at their super speed. And Harry knew that Vlad was going to be absolutely livid when he realized that the wards Harry had set wouldn't let them through, that they were trapped with the students and staff of Hogwarts in the Great Hall. "Yes, a gift for you, my child. My gift only mine to give," he said close to Harry's ear. "It is time to make you mine." Harry felt the men shift around them, and they peeled away to give Harry and Voldemort space. "Yes, only mine to give, my mark." Harry understood then. Voldemort had to mark him. He took a deep breath. Play the part. He told himself. This is it. He stood before Voldemort and then knelt at Voldemort's feet. He bowed his head and rolled up his shirt sleeve with small, sure movements, taking his time to ensure that the folds were crisp and smooth. When it was just at his elbow, he stopped, removed his mask, and then looked up at Voldemort. Voldemort smiled down at him and rested one hand on the side of Harry's face. "Are you ready, my child?" he asked. "Yes, sir." Harry bowed his head again and then raised his arm. Voldemort's wand touched Harry's arm. "Mors Mordra." Harry felt the spell enter his skin and mark him. He was surprised that it did not hurt. He thought it would hurt. As soon as he had the thought, fire ripped through his bones, and he screamed. He screamed for far longer than he thought possible, but in all reality, it was only a few seconds. Inside his body, something snapped, and now was the time. Voldemort's smile contorted into a grimace as he dropped his wand and screamed louder than Harry had. Harry pulled himself away from Voldemort. "Now," he shouted. At his signal, Robinson cast a spell and hit 6 Death Eaters at once, disarming them. He did it again, and Harry joined in, using the magic Hogwarts had given him to disarm the entire group at once. A quick gesture threw them all back through the air towards the gates of Hogwarts. Figures apparat just beyond the gates and stormed towards the Death Eaters with shouts of "Ors! Lay down your wands." Harry turned back to Voldemort and saw the man on his feet again, rage burning in his eyes. "Why? I gave you everything." Voldemort wailed at him. "Everything." Voldemort's face contorted as he processed the fact that his Death Eaters were taken into custody, Robinson directing the Aurors after giving up his wand. Harry raised his hand, and a domed shield descended around him, and Voldemort, digging into the ground and shielding against the Aurors now approaching them. "Not everything," Harry said. "You were cruel, so cruel. You took away more than you ever gave me." Harry told the man, "Now, Lord Voldemort, it's time that death caught up to your flight." Harry raised his hand again, and the dome shattered around them, tossing the pair of them high into the air. Both men plummeted to the torn earth, and the entire grounds of Hogwarts felt their impact as a concussive wave of magic exploded out of them. When the magic settled, the doors of Hogwarts finally opened, releasing those inside. The meeting between the Magus and the Dark Lord was over. Vlad, Cassius, and Khaled were the first to reach the site. Lord Voldemort and Harry Potter were sprawled on the ground with no light in their eyes. That's the end of An Ant's Love, a story that didn't need epic battles or dark lords to feel powerful. It showed us that healing, care, and ordinary love can change the course of a life. What part of Harry's journey resonated most with you? How did it feel to see him nurtured instead of neglected? Share your reflections in the comments. We'd love to hear what this story meant to you. If this audiobook moved you, like, subscribe, and consider joining our Wizard Army to help keep stories like this alive. Your support allows us to give voice to incredible fan works that reimagine what's possible in our favorite worlds. Did you know? An Ant's Love gained popularity for its psychological realism, and was one of the early fanfics to explore Petunia as a redemptive figure. It's often cited as a foundational FIC in the raised by someone else genre. And remember, sometimes the quietest stories leave the deepest mark, because love, once given freely, creates a kind of magic no prophecy ever could. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. And as always, stay curious, stay kind, and let your heart guide your magic. We'll see you in the next story.